Come on, Rockfin. Okay, there we go. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Easter Sunday and happy 420, whichever one you choose to celebrate, or if you celebrate both. Welcome, guys, to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We are going to kick things off with our special guest today, Mr. Niko House. Today's theme is law and order. And I think you'll see what that means when we get to all the stories. I'm in a goofy mood because it is 420 on Easter. It's 420 on Easter. I don't know what to tell you guys. And I already see the doobie-doobie-doos in the chat. So I see some of you do partake. Here's what we're talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Oprah Winfrey subpoena. This is a big one. I'm shocked that she has been subpoenaed in this case. We're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about Donald Trump doubles down. That is in reference to the gentleman from Maryland who was sent to El Salvador. We're going to get into these so-called gang symbols that Donald Trump is saying that Abrego has. We're getting into all of that. We're also going to discuss James Carville rejects change. Yes, he's at it again, the Crypt Keeper. We're also discussing the Florida State University suspect update. We're going to give you some information about that guy there and how he's not cooperating with law enforcement. We'll get into all of that. Of course, Niko House is here, and we're also going to discuss the Kaysen Allison case, which is very similar to the Carmelo Anthony case. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. You've seen him here before, Niko House. He's a commentator, a journalist. He also organized the largest Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign effort. Let's go ahead and bring him in. What's up, Niko?
What's going on, Sabby? Happy 4 Bunny, everybody. I mean, it's like, it's together. So now you got to say 4 Bunny. That's why I call it. You celebrate Easter.
It's weird and crazy. I was like, I can't believe Easter is on 420, but here we
and
are.
on Sunday. Like, it's like, I mean, at least everybody going to have a really good Easter dinner. They're going to enjoy that Easter.
People may have gone to church this morning and then they came home and
exactly right. So, but happy Easter, everybody.
Oh my gosh. So Niko, you had this tweet here. I want to bring this up for everyone to see. Niko responded to this statement from Donald Trump. You guys know what's happening, right? Like Donald Trump is criticizing Harvard University. We went over that story before, but this happened recently. He goes on to say that Harvard is basically anti-Semitic. You guys listen to this.
That was wrong. Why are you considering changing the tax status of Harvard?
Because I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden they're starting to behave. But when you see what they were saying, what they were doing, when you see the way they took care of events, when you watch that woman, that horrendous president that ruined the image of Harvard, maybe permanently, in Congress, in the halls of Congress, when you take a look at what happened there, it was horrific. And, I've looked at a lot having to do with it. I'm not involved in it. It's being handled by lawyers. I read about it just like you did. But tax exempt status, I mean, it's a privilege. It's really a privilege. And it's been abused by a lot more than Harvard, too, by a lot more than Harvard. So we'll see how that all works out.
Okay, that was the statement there from Donald Trump calling Harvard anti-Semitic. And then, Niko, you issued a response. You said if the Harvard students all of a sudden started calling the Black students the N-word for participating in BLM protests, Trump would not give a single fuck, shit, or damn. But for some reason, Zionists get special protective victim status. Nobody else is entitled to. Funny that. I want to get into that, Niko, because I think we can all see what is happening here, the lengths that the U.S. government is willing to go to when it comes to what they consider to be anti-Semitism, which we do not. You see what they're willing to change laws. They're willing to withhold money from universities. But you had a point there, like they would never go to like those extremes for Black people.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth mentioning the fact that he's actually trying to pursue this anti-Semitic narrative, right? And you see the way that he referred to the ex-president. He's referring to, because the ex-president was Black, a Black woman, right? But he's continuing to call the university anti-Semitic, forgetting that the new president is Alan Garber. For those of you who don't know, Alan Garber is Jewish. And the entire staff has backed his decision-making regarding how to deal with these matters regarding Harvard, the claims that merely protesting genocide is anti-Semitic, but Trump won't mention his name. Trump won't refer to him. He's calling what the previous president did a mistake or a disgrace or whatever, and yet won't even mention Alan's name. Why is that? Because then obviously, one, he can't really pull those emotional heartstrings from his, from that side of his base as racist, looking for a way to use to weaponize race in order to divide people on this particular issue, forgetting that there are Black Jews who are discriminated against by white Ashkenazi Jews, for example, that never get mentioned. And if at the end of the day, it's like I said, there has been, this is the only case probably in the last 30 or 40 years where a university had their tax exempt status threatened. The last successful case was Bob Jones University in South Carolina. And it was literally the most extreme possible case you could think of. They literally refused to allow interracial marriage, and they had their tax exempt status revoked. There's been nothing like that to happen ever since. The threat of this, and the only reason that was able to go through is because people get their tax exempt status from a 501c3, right? You have to follow federal law. The law, like you can't be like people can't get married. In this particular case, it is only an ideological difference that has no federal precedent, no court precedent, no judicial precedents whatsoever. Is Trump just being Trump on a fit because he doesn't like the way Harvard is handling business, and he doesn't like the fact that they're all joining up together, getting behind their president and pushing back. And so not only is he trying to reject funds from them, but he's actually telling them to vet the ideologies of their students better when they accept them. That's insane.
Yeah, it's true. And you brought up Bob Jones. I used to live in South Carolina. I don't know if everyone is familiar with Bob Jones. Very strict establishment. I remember when I was on the debate team, we had to debate Bob Jones.
We did too.
You did too.
Yeah. Yo, I was like, yo, that school is weird as fuck.
Yeah, no, because both of us. Wait, that's right. Because both of us went to high school in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, duh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
You're good. Bob Jones' school. For those of you who don't know, Bob Jones' school you go to from like 4 years old until you graduate college. You don't leave Bob Jones. It's a cult, basically.
Yeah, and it's very strict because I know like the girls there was one line for the girls and one line for the boys, and then like you can't
and
have.
they wouldn't let the girls and the boys be debate partners. Like you can only be a debate partner with the same sex. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first experience with Bob Jones University. And I know me and my friends on the debate team, we were just kind of like, what is up with this school? Like, yeah.
I debated them in high school and in college. And it's like worse in college. They're actually like more strict in college.
Yeah. Yeah. But to Niko's point, we haven't seen them go this extreme, right? So it's like willing to do anything, withhold funds from Harvard. And I know Harvard has the largest endowment, but I explained on the show how endowments actually work. But the reality is it's not just Harvard. They're withholding funds from other schools too, but Harvard's getting all the attention because it's Harvard. But the thing is like, to your point, the president.
So the withholding funds is one thing, but getting rid of the tax exempt status is actually more sinister. And the reason why is because that 501c3 tax exempt status, it stops them from having to pay taxes as a nonprofit. But what it does as well is takes away the donors, right, ability to claim tax exempt, to be tax exempt from the donations that in the endowments they give to the school. So now you're disincentivizing people. These people give not like 100,000, 200, they're like $1 million donors that otherwise they might not be donating that much money anymore because they no longer get that tax exempt protection from the donations that they otherwise would have gotten. So like, they're like, cause that's what I was thinking at first. I'm like, well, they're getting like billions of dollars in donations a year. Like the endowments make up a lot of Harvard's money. And then you figure out, oh shit, those endowments won't be tax free anymore. So that could change everything for Harvard specifically. And it's really kind of a message to the rest of the elite schools, because it's a private and public school thing. Like everybody can get it at this point. If this precedent is set where you can just take away someone's tax exempt status based off of some abstract ideological claim that they're not behaving the way you want them to, that is scary going forward because not every college is Harvard, right? So you got your HBCUs, for example, that could be affected in the same way. And those endowments for those colleges are way more important than for Harvard. Harvard's going to be all right. But, maybe Fayetteville State University, it wouldn't go down like that.
And the tax exempt status is a response to, in my opinion, Harvard receiving an increase of endowments since the crackdown on, the anti-Semitism and them withholding some of the federal funding. So their donations actually increased after that happened. So he's like, okay, I'll come after your tax exempt status. And I want to explain to people what that's used for too. When I worked at these universities, anytime you purchase something, whether it's supplies for the labs, anytime you purchase foods for the events that they have on campus, there's a number on your basic, like your credit card for the school. So, right. So if you have to purchase things as an employee, you get a credit card that's for the school. And it may be a Visa, MasterCard, or whatever, but there's a tax exempt number that's on that card. So every time you make a purchase, you enter that tax exempt number so that you don't have to pay the taxes on what you're purchasing. So think about all the supplies that they purchase for those labs, all the food that they have to, like everything that they buy. Imagine how much they would be spending if they had to pay the taxes on it. So that's going to have an effect on everything.
Yep. And like you said, it wouldn't be a big deal if it was just like, oh, we're going to remove your federal funding. I'm pretty sure Harvard's like, yeah, as much as we appreciate it, we don't really give a shit about your federal funding. It's like nothing compared to the billions. They get billions of dollars in endowments. But now when you're talking about taking away tax exempt status, like specifically, it enters a whole different realm because Harvard might be affected a little bit by it. I mean, I'm sure they have reserves of endowment money, and they can outlast the Trump presidency. I feel like a lot of people feel like that. But it isn't just Harvard. And it also just sets a dangerous precedent because now the next president that comes in, they can do the same thing, right? That's what the scary thing. It's like, if he's allowed to do this, then what happens next? That's principally what I'm concerned with. I will say, I gain a little bit of respect for Harvard because I'm not really a fan of elite Ivy League schools. And the fact that they all decided like to push back against this, and the president now being Jewish, being like, you're full of shit. There's no anti-Semitism going on here. Like, we're going to stand by our students. We're going to stand by our students' right to protest. We're going to stand by our Palestinian students and our Muslim students and our Arab students. And we're not going to let you pit us against each other and use money and ideology to do so. I gained a little bit of respect for him because I thought they were going to fold, and they did not. And even though Trump is clearly trying to make an example out of them, because he's like refusing to talk about other schools around the country. Like, they talked about Columbia because of Khalil, right? They're talking about Harvard, obviously, because it's Harvard. They had that issue, and he's focused on the former black president, but refuses to acknowledge the fact that the current Jewish white president is on her side. Basically, it holds the same beliefs in that regard, and he's trying to make examples out of elite schools, and that it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope because we know these presidents, whether or not people want to admit it, Democrat or Republican, they tend to follow each other. Like, whenever Trump was calling people domestic terrorists, and then his like during the BLM protests, especially the George Floyd protests, he was calling all the protesters domestic terrorists, and then his people were going along with it. I said, y'all are stupid as shit. Y'all do know once Biden gets in, that's gonna fall right back on y'all. So what happened with January 6th? Oh, they're all domestic terrorists, all of them. Yep. Why? Because Trump just set that precedent. If you protest and the president doesn't like it, you're not a domestic terrorist. It can be treated as such. And people, just like during the BLM protests, were being held without arraignments, were being held without bail, were being held without being charged with anything, using the same policy that Trump set up. So this is what happens. Democrat or Republican, there will be consequences if Trump's allowed to continue on like this.
Yep. And this is why people say the Democratic Party should be pushing back in other ways, right? Like, there's other things that they can do, but they're not willing to do it. And that's another thing. But it is a very scary time because, to your point, everyone keeps saying, oh, it's Harvard, who cares? But it's not just Harvard, right? They're starting with Harvard. So, like, to Niko's point, that sets the precedent. If they're willing to start with the top school in the country, what makes you think they're not going to go after the schools that are like ranked 156th?
Yep. Especially those schools, right? Because those schools, like, the majority of the students are going to go to those types of schools. The majority of the world isn't going to Harvard or Yale, right? It's the schools in the middle that will suffer. Like, they need the endowments that they get. Even like, so I went to UNC, and UNC is heavily reliant on state and federal funding and endowment money, like, because they try their hardest to help people who might be financially incapable of going there without assistance. Like, UNC would be ruined in years if this was allowed to continue. And it's one of the top schools in the country. And so there are others that aren't even in that type of bracket of education, or institutional education anyway, that would be wiped out in a couple of years. Like, they're from year to year trying to get by. And basically they would have to shut down all protests. You wouldn't be allowed to express yourself. You would have to change the way you teach classes. Like, it would basically be like kind of what happens in public school for the most part right now, right? Especially if you live in the South. I'm sure the way you might have learned about slavery in New York is definitely not the way that we learned about it in the South. Like, I always tell people, being in North Carolina, I didn't even know Fred Hampton was a co-founder of the Black Panthers until I was an adult, even though, like, I was like, that's kind of weird to leave that fucking part out, right? Like, how are you gonna talk about we talk about the Black Panthers, we talk about Huey P. Newton, right? But like, we never talked about Fred Hampton. We never. High school, and I took AP US, I took all the history class you could think of. Never learned about Fred Hampton. Like, nope. So that's what we're on the way to seeing, and like, we're talking about the erasure of a genocide out of history books, people. Like, that's what they're because that's what they're pushing, basically. Not only erasure of a genocide, but the supremacy of a nation and the justification of their supremacy. Like, that is a terrifying thought, considering, like, eventually, I'm sure some of y'all, like, a lot of y'all want your kids to go to college one day, right? Like, and you want them to be taught, like, yeah, Israel is a supremacist nation. Like, Because we're all aware of what's going on right now. But look how quickly the Armenian genocide got erased. Like people found out about that later. Look how quickly, or look how long it took for people to know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Black Wall Street. Look at how people don't even know about the genocide in Congo, right? Committed by Belgium that committed the genocide. Like people don't even know about this stuff because it was useful for people. Or it was intentional. That's my opinion anyway. Because right, how can you focus so much on the Holocaust but not know about the genocide in Congo? How can you focus on the Holocaust but not talk about the Armenian genocide? The Armenian genocide is ignored because the U.S. helped facilitate the Armenian genocide, right? So the Palestinian genocide eventually will be ignored. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 10 years, but in 20, 30, 40 years, the Palestinian genocide, if this type of stuff is allowed to continue, will be ignored. Why? Because the U.S. helped facilitate it. So, and they're not going to want to be attached to it. And if Trump's allowed to do this, that's probably what will happen. It'll slowly be erased from the history books, like the apartheid itself in Palestine and Israel has been erased from the history books.
Yeah, what you guys are seeing happening right now will not be in the history books for sure. Like or the narrative will be very different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like Niko was saying, like when we were in school and we learned about the Black Panthers. No, they didn't. Fred Hampton wasn't in my history book
at all, which is like, that's so crazy. Like now that I know about the story, you're like, motherfucker, he was murdered by the cops and as a co-founder at 21 years old, and y'all don't think it was important to talk about him? They didn't even
tell us, like, honestly, back then I remember they didn't even tell us that the Black Panthers did mutual aid. They didn't tell us they set up, like they built clinics or anything like that. The way it was written in our history book was that the Black Panthers were a militant, radical group. And they were trying to fight against the police and all that kind of stuff. And this is why sometimes, like, you know, one of the things I appreciate about my grandmother was pretty honest about like some of the things that happened back then. Like she was the first one that told me that during the civil rights movement, even a lot of Black people weren't happy with MLK and what he was trying to do. My grandma told me that.
Mm-hmm. My grandma told me the same thing. My grandma was like, there were probably a lot more Black people aligned with Malcolm X and the Black Panthers than MLK because they wanted him to they wanted MLK to, and of course, what people often forget is that MLK ended up being closer to Malcolm X by the time he died than and Malcolm X, he softened up a little bit and tried to see MLK's side as well. But that Black Panther situation was crazy because, like you said, they described it. I remember pretty vividly them being described as a militia group, them trying to kind of group the history books, trying to group him with Malcolm X as like this violent guy who just only thought things could be our violent group rather that thought things could only be resolved through violence. And that was only because Black Panthers were talking about like protecting themselves, empowering themselves through the Second Amendment, like any other American should be able to. Talking about community, not being willing to put up with the violence that came their way. Like that was the only reason that they described. And I don't even think that, technically speaking, Black Panthers called themselves a militia, but they were described as one. And then, of course, the history books made sure to mention that they were a domestic terrorist organization, or they were labeled a domestic terrorist organization. Made sure to say that. But like no mention of Fred Hampton, because obviously if you dig deep enough, then you'll figure out like, oh shit, like they were legally found guilty. The government was legally found guilty of plotting his murder. So,
yep.
So if you find that out, then you go down that rabbit hole. Then it don't stop there. So his man was an informant. Like it goes crazy. It gets deep, and then you got to figure out why. Then you start figuring out about how he united Black people and white people and how they were doing mutual aid. More than anything, it was mutual aid. Yeah, they try to protect yourselves, but they were more focused on community. That was what they were more focused on. So you don't want, and we're getting into a world now, we're in an age of information where you can obviously go look up the truth if you want to seek it out. But at the end of the day, like we don't want to spend all of our time having to correct our kids after they learn something false in school, because that's really like, a lot of the time, that's what people are doing now. You're having you learn this, like Christopher Columbus, like we shouldn't have Columbus Day, but we have one, and here's why, but here's the truth. It's a lot to keep up with. So like the indoctrination has to stop, and it's getting scary. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't think that Trump would actually go as far as he's been going recently. I'll be honest with you, Sabby. It's a lot. It's like he's trying to pretend like he's in control. So he's like trying to goad his base into these like racial qualms, this SJW bullshit, Of course, obviously doing a lot of it on behalf of Israel, but just even a lot of this just the race baiting that we've been seeing lately. It's been like over the top to the point where you're like, hey, bro, are you trying to hide something? Like, is something going on? Are you realizing actually for the first time that you don't actually have control over shit like you thought you did? Because that's my opinion. I believe that's what the tariffs were about too, which is a whole different conversation. He went over the top with these tariffs trying to prove that he's in control of an international community that he's no longer in control of like he thought he was. He thought he can come in, I'm going to fix the war in Ukraine. I'm going to fix the situation in Gaza and Israel. I'm going to fix the situation with China. And then when he realized that he actually couldn't do it, he's like, well, let me try to show a force and see how people react. And it's like, it didn't go the way he thought it would. Because it just, everything just seemed like a desperate attempt to distract from the fact that he's no longer in control. And he's realizing it and freaking the fuck out, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I knew he would be bad, but good grief. Like,
and getting Joe Biden, like, I'm telling people, like, he's starting to look more and more like Joe Biden every day. Even his speeches, like, he was way sharper in 2016 and in 2020. Right now, like, he will lie like 3 times in like 30 seconds. And it's like, usually he knows he's lying. But this is different. I know. I remember Trump from 2016. People think that he's being cheeky. And, oh, no, he's being tongue and cheeky. He's just being funny. And I'm like, I don't think so, guys. I think that he actually might be. He old too, right? We all get it. It eventually happens to everybody. People forget. And he's old and has been active and engaged and on his feet and involved in a bunch of legal cases here, political situations there, 3 elections now. That's a huge toll on the mind and the body. Right? Who's to say that he's not suffering from mental decline as well?
Oh boy. Well, speaking of that brings me to this case because this was brought to my attention, and you guys, I told you guys before, when I find out more information, we're gonna bring it forward. Right. So the theme today is law and order, and we've been talking about the Carmelo Anthony case. It was brought to my attention by you guys who emailed me that there is another case in Texas that is similar to the Carmelo Anthony case. And I want to play this video here. This involves Kaysen Allison. Everyone, listen to this really quick. Similar situation with Carmelo Anthony. And then, Niko, I want to get your take on this.
Video was replayed from yesterday showing the school hallway where you see the boys entering the bathroom and then leaving sometime later in a rush. And then the short video caught on Shamel's phone of what happened on the other side of the door was played. Shamel explaining that what he caught on video shows Ramirez taking the first swing at Allison, and then you see Allison pull out the knife before a loud scream is heard and the video cuts off. Barber said Allison didn't want to fight and just wanted to make it to graduation. And Shamel said in the moment, it didn't look like Allison wanted to fight. Barber also said that Ramirez and his friends were known to fight, and Shamel saying Ramirez liked having his fights recorded, and that this fight was planned, but no one expected it to happen on school grounds. Barber said it wasn't normal for Allison to have a knife on him, but she knew he had one because Allison told her he got one for protection. An altercation was described by former students that an argument broke out at a prom after party, and it was likely that Ramirez and Allison verbally fought over a girl. Shamel told the court that Ramirez looked surprised to see Allison in the bathroom that day, and you could feel the tension between the two. Barber is seen talking to Ramirez on the hallway security footage, visibly upset. She started to cry as she explained to the court that she was trying to tell Ramirez that the fight isn't worth it because they are about to graduate. Court wrapped for the day just 20 minutes after a 5th witness was brought in, Josh Grimes, another good friend of Ramirez, who was also in the bathroom when the fight started. So they will be back here tomorrow morning at 9, where the defense will continue to question Grimes.
So this case here between these two boys, Ramirez and Allison, similar situation, Niko, where one had a knife with him on him, just like Carmelo Anthony, right? So they got into a scuffle or whatever, and the kid that had the knife stabbed the other kid, just like with Carmelo Anthony. But
which, by the way, is actually kind of worse. I mean, because from the way it was described, he's saying that he was to some degree aware that there was going to be a fight in school, potentially. There's going to be altercation, and it was premeditated. So like now you're in that's actually a worse situation than what Carmelo. Carmelo's like, he looked like he always just kept a knife on for protection because it's like you're a black kid in Texas, and you just never know what can happen. I don't know if I've ever been in track, by the way. I was part of a brawl. Not I didn't do it. It was like, but half of our track team was part of a gang. So like it just so happened that half of the other track team was part of a gang, and it was a brawl. It ended up like just being fists. But like you never know what could happen depending on what area you live in. And Texas is wild, y'all. I don't know if you know these high schools in Texas, but you talking about like open campus on high school. They can just walk out and leave and come back when they want to. It's like Wild West out there. So just let y'all know. it's not that crazy to have a knife on you at a track meet. I'm just saying.
But well, I never had that. I had that experience. But the thing I want to bring up is this. Notice how the media, corporate media, Fox News, all of them, notice how they are covering the Carmelo Anthony case. Yep. You don't see them covering this case, which is very similar and in Texas around the same time.
Yeah, it's like within the exact same. It's like, I think it's supposed to go from it started, maybe a couple of days ago. And it's supposed to go until the 25th. And I think Carmelo Anthony's case is actually around, like literally supposed to be happening around the same time. Even their bond. The bond was $1 million originally for Case and Allison. And then it got lowered to $250,000. Same thing happened with Carmelo. Right? But like I said, in this situation with Carmelo, what's interesting to me is that all of a sudden these people who are they just preach self-defense, like that argument just goes out the window, and you're seeing them create this divide on purpose, like literally, like without even trying to hide it. Like, oh, we need to drum up sympathy for the what's his name, the white kid who was stabbed by Carmelo, Metcalf. Yeah, like we need to drum up. Like basically, they want to drum up sympathy. They only create like a GoFundMe, literally to compete with Carmelo. Like it's weird, y'all. They're like, oh, we got to defend our guy. You look at this monster. Look at that. And even tried to make up lies about his family buying this house using the Give, Send, Go money. And they're like, no, we moved because one, we need the safety because of how this case is being covered, right? Which is crazy, right? Because you didn't read anything. At least I didn't see anything about Case and Allison, his whole family needing to relocate because of how this case was covered.
But why? But why is that, Niko? This is the point I'm trying to make. I think the media chose to focus on the Carmelo Anthony case and not the Case and Allison case, which they should focus on both because they're trying to make it a racial divide.
Exactly.
That's what I really think is happening. Remember, both sides have said that this was not a racial incident. Both sides with Carmelo Anthony's case have said that. But the media, you look at Fox News, the way they covered this, the way a lot of the conservative commentators like Benny Johnson, Officer Tatum, the way that they covered it and stuff like that. But they're not talking about the Case and Ellison case. Similar case, same state, around the same time. So what I'm trying to put out there to people is they're trying to, I really do think, create some type of a race war.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's at least they're trying to create like some online way. Because let's be honest, unfortunately, with a lot of those SJW commentators, they can't focus on Trump as much anymore. A lot of them can't make money off of the Trump economy, was what I like to call it, because he's been kind of screwing them over. A lot of them are trying to transition away from it, and they have to go into these SJW tactics. They have to revert back. Even Fox News, right? Because talking about Israel is not the business. Like, it's not winning them anybody over. Trump and these tariffs are exposing everybody. It's like, okay, are you loyal to the U.S. or are you loyal to Trump? And the way that people are trying to defend his tariffs has been going over that well. So what do you have to revert back to? Same thing when you're not talking about Biden and you can't defend Trump, they go back to SJW tactics. Not unlike what they complain about with radical leftists or really liberals. So they have to make it about race. And it doesn't work if you're talking about a white kid who stabbed a Latino, right? It doesn't work the same. But if a black kid stabs a white kid, what is he doing with a knife on school campus? And he like, well, no, the dude approached him and he said, don't touch me. And he touched me and he got stabbed. I mean, I actually agree with being able to defend yourself. I personally think he should have took it that far, but I also don't think he should be tried for murder. Like, I don't think he should be found guilty of murder. But like, you did bring a knife on school campus, like or even at a track meet, that's illegal, right? So you're gonna have to deal with those consequences. But it isn't, like you said, had nothing to do with race. has nothing to do with the character of Carmelo Anthony as a young man. I mean, he was captain of his track team, captain of his football team. His family seems to be well-to-do. His mom is a stay-at-home mother because his dad does so well for himself. They didn't use that money from Give, Say, and Go, but people are lying because there was an assumption that how could a black family move out of nowhere into a gated community? Well, we were actually living in a nice house before. We just moved houses. That's it. Because of y'all. But Case and Allison's family didn't have to do that. Why is that? And no one wants to deal with that question.
That part right there. And speaking of that, the father did speak out again. Austin Metcalf's dad just spoke. There was a rally. I guess this was supposed to be a rally for Austin Metcalf, and his father was not a part of this rally. But they did something that I thought was just so crummy. They called his dad on the phone to let him know, like, hey, we're here, like, rallying for Austin. And this is supposed to be like this white lives, like protect white lives or whatever, like rally, right? I want you guys to hear what the father says to them on the phone.
Would you be willing to stand by me in a press conference or in an individual interview and talk about this issue that is larger than Austin at this point? God rest the beautiful young man's soul that would have been one of our strongest voices if he was still alive today. Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, my turn to speak. You are part of the fucking problem, my friend.
Hey.
You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any fucking...
That's called white guilt.
No, let it talk. My son, let me finish. I give you your time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you.
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir. You are creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness.
Here, you are being weak. I gotta be honest with you about that, sir.
You're being weak.
Wow.
Condemn your son's killer and the culture that caused it.
So here is Austin Metcalf's dad, who they called, which I'm sorry, like this was just so dirty. Like, let him grieve his son, right? So they called his dad while they're at this rally. And his dad said, you are trying to create racial divide. He said, take my son's picture off your website. If you guys haven't seen, they have a picture of Austin Metcalf that's kind of going around on social media and apparently also on this website. And it says white lives matter, that type of thing. And the father basically said, no, I'm not having this. What are you doing?
It's crazy how it went from all lives matter to white lives matter that quick, huh, Sabby? Kind of like how we said it was always white lives, because that's what they were really saying whenever people say all lives matter. If like, why do you have to say if black lives matter? Why do you have to say all lives matter? If all lives matter, rather, why do you have to negate me when I say black lives matter? Because what you really mean to say is white lives matter. No, I don't know why. Like, I'm not saying your lives don't matter, but why do you need to interrupt me to say that? And they're making it, at least they're being honest. But shout out to his dad, yo. He's like, hey, just want to make sure everybody hears me. Fuck y'all. I don't want nothing to do with you. And I appreciate the fact that even in this time of grief, like he took the time to make it known how he felt. Because I believe to some degree he understands, like, I'm not a fool, because you know your kids. And he's like, my son was the aggressor. And he probably raised his son better. And he also probably knows, of course, his son's not racist, but we know, especially like you live in Fayetteville, like you know how school rivalries can get. It can get violent, unfortunately. That's just a reality of the situation. In a situation that shouldn't have turned bad, made a turn for the worse. It doesn't mean Carmelo is an evil human being. It doesn't mean that Austin deserved to die. And that's just it's an unfortunate situation. I do believe in self-defense, but none of this has to do with race. I don't believe that Austin Metcalf was racist. I believe that was probably like, get the hell out of my tent. You're not from our school. And for all we know, it could be a heated school. I mean, our school was in a couple of heated ass rivalries, and you don't know what that person's intention is. And and we don't know what personally, and I made this point on Twitter, like you don't know what Carmelo has been through, right? Like I have anxiety being like in large crowds or in clubs or situations like that, or like if somebody like starts raising their voice out of nowhere, because where I grew up at in Fayetteville, like the moment someone raises their voice, you're assuming it's a punch about to be thrown or someone's about to get shot.
Yeah.
And it was my life for the majority of my young adult life. That was what I had gone through. And so like my brother always like jokes, but he's being dead ass serious. Everybody's like, oh, why? How can you fight so well? And he's like, oh, it's because I have anxiety. I have really bad anxiety. I get nervous, and so I don't take any chances. And everybody starts laughing. And he's dead. Like, no, we're dead ass serious. Because my friends later on in life, they came from pretty well off families. We went to night schools, but like whenever we felt like we were threatened, me or my brother, like we don't take any chances. We just knock motherfucker out. We don't, because you're yelling, you're raising your voice. My assumption is you're gonna fight me. We don't know if you've lived in Texas, if you've been to Texas, bro, like go to like El Paso. My godson, immediately. It's sad because I had to be on his head about it, and it's gotten a lot of trouble. But like, also understand it. He's half Mexican, half white, but he looks white, so he's not Mexican. Basically, is what I'm telling y'all. And he moved to El Paso in his junior year of high school, guys. He ain't make it a week without having to fight somebody. Didn't make it a week. And that was unfortunately somewhat of a race thing. It wasn't directly related to that. It was like partially being a new kid, not being Mexican at a mostly Mexican school. Like, but my godson also reacted to living in Fayetteville his entire life. And he's like, if you raising your voice, and he started carrying a pistol with him to school. He didn't bring it on campus. It was open campus, but like he would hide his pistol away because he remembered everybody who's died or almost died because of the experiences that he lived in Fayetteville. So we don't even know what Carmelo's gone through that he felt like he had to bring a knife.
Yeah, Niko and I both went to high school in Vietnam and Fayetteville, North Carolina, but we used to call it Vietnam. And like I went to Southview, and the school rivalry is like it was a big deal. Like there was a kid at my school, and I'll never forget this, you guys. This is why I say, like, you never know, right? There was a kid at my school. He got into an argument with kids from, rivalry school, right? At the McDonald's. This wasn't even,
whenever First and South used to beef.
Yeah, like got into an argument at McDonald's, and they left McDonald's or whatever, and that was supposed to be the end of it. He left McDonald's, went to the gas station. They followed him to the gas station and killed him.
Yep.
Killed him. That was my freshman year of college. My mom called me to tell me, do you know this kid he was a senior?
How many people have been killed at Rayford Road McDonald's? Like over nothing. Over nothing. Like things that like are trivial, juvenile, like now, yeah. But like for that stuff, just because you leave Fayetteville, like you don't ever remember that. People always talk about the fact, like Fayetteville people always mention the fact, like, yo, you feel like you never, like Fayetteville never leaves you, because the way people think, like y'all, a lot of people in some cities, they feel like they're gangster or whatever, like, or they feel like they're this hot shit and, oh yeah, we like fight, we'll do this, we'll do that. But like people from Fayetteville, if you look like you're about to start some shit, even if they're out of town, especially if they're out of town, they think we're crazy. Because when you say your intention, or you show your intention to fight somebody, like from Fayetteville, it's going to happen. We're not waiting for you to figure it out. We're not about to have a whole conversation about it. We're going to do whatever we can to protect ourselves, because in Fayetteville, they don't really do that much talking. Somebody is going to die, or somebody is going to get into a fight. And so I'm not saying it is right, but I'm just saying like that's reality. And so with this Carmelo situation, being that he's in Texas, I don't know what the dynamics of the school are. I don't know what's going on with, because it could be like that. Especially, like I said, given my godson's experience, I don't know what the dynamic is. So even though he shouldn't have had that knife with him, and he comes from a well-off family, what the hell I don't know what's going on in that situation where he felt like he needed to protect himself with a knife, because he was very, very clear, according to what everybody's saying. Like, he told him, don't put your hands on me, and was ready immediately to defend himself in a way that could destroy his life, unfortunately. It really is already destroying his life, even if he gets off, right? The way that people viewing him, we don't know how that's going to affect his future. We don't know if it's going to affect scholarships, college applications, jobs, because now he's famous for stabbing a white kid, and we know how much implicit racial bias is out there.
Well, I'll tell you what I heard recently. Judge Joe Brown has been covering this. He was covering it on Dana's show, Dana with the Data. And Judge Joe Brown was comparing these two cases, Casey and Allison and Carmelo Anthony. And he said, with both cases, the force that was used is not self-defense for both of them. And he said because the response is not adequate to the force that was used against them.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate truth is I can see that. Because if you got a really good lawyer arguing for one case, so because Carmelo had time to go in his bag, right, to pull the knife out, it actually would mean that there wasn't enough force, like he didn't. It was like a life-threatening movement that was made by Metcalf, by Austin, because if you were like knocked on your ass, shot, or something like that, or being jumped, you're not really gonna have enough time to get into your bag to get your knife to pull it out and to stab him. And
but he said the same. He said the same thing about Case and Ellison. He said the same thing. So
Ellison, there was already an acknowledgement that there was a problem that he was waiting to happen, like that he was waiting to happen. So that's premeditated. So he was kind of screwed from the jump. And then you brought a knife on campus, onto your own school, and you stab somebody with the expectation of a fight happening, not knowing that this other you didn't say like, oh, I had heard that he had a gun. And if he would have said that prior to the stabbing, I feel like that might have somewhat justified it. Like then you can maybe get into the argument of self-defense with a little bit more confidence. But at the bare minimum, both are going to get manslaughter. At the very bare minimum, both are going to get manslaughter on top of obviously bringing weapons onto a school campus, which is a federal crime, I think, in most states. It's a federal crime, right?
At Texas, they can bring a knife as long as the blade is a certain inches. It has to be a certain size.
Texas shit ever. Like, what?
I looked it up. I'm serious. I looked it up because I was curious as well. But here's the thing. The manslaughter thing, I think you're right. At the bare minimum, both of them, because there was a kid here in Massachusetts. He was just turning 18. He was a senior in high school. He was about to go to college. And he was texting and driving, and he looked up and he hit a car head on. So it was a head on collision. The man in the car died. And I watched the trial on TV. I remember watching the local news when they sentenced him to jail. His life is over. And I remember he was crying in the court, young kid. He was crying and he was like, I didn't mean to do it. I looked down at my phone for like 1 second. And sometimes that's all it takes. But the judge, the jury wasn't trying to hear that. They were just like, you may not have meant to kill that man, but you did kill him. So you got it. They charged him with manslaughter. So I would be surprised if neither one of these cases don't get that.
Yeah, because that's an accident, right? That's like not premeditated. And when you're talking about murdering a kid, I think they were both 18, right? All parties were at least 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Carmelo is 17.
So, but in Texas they get charged from 16 and up. They get charged with they get charged as 18-year-olds, right? As adults, if I'm not mistaken. Because him being 17 might be the only saving grace he has. Like to not be getting life, but I think that he's facing. Oh no, Case is facing 5 to 99. Is it Case who's facing 5 years and 99 years, or is it Carmelo?
Rick said 17 is an adult in Texas.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. So it's both of them then. Probably they're both facing life basically, which is sad. It really is. Kids, stop! Come on, y'all. Y'all got to stop this shit. That's just another just from as a kid as an adult who has been a young guy, I understand like the world's crazy right now. Like, and the internet is trying to tell you how to act and how you should handle yourself. And I know your friends can be a major influence, but sometimes y'all just got to stop and think, bro. Like, just stop. Don't let your adrenaline think for you. Just stop. Just, even if you got to, like, once Kaysen realized that there was going to be a fight over a girl, bro, talk to your parents. Just don't go to fucking school. Talk to whoever you got to talk to. Right. One time I did that and it didn't work out exactly how I would have liked it to. I still ended up having to fight the person, but like it was probably heavily de-escalated because I told my mom, and normally I wouldn't have done that, but my mom got the principal involved and it was going to be like this big fight between not just with me and the dude, but like with everybody involved. And it did end up just being me and the guy, but it was dealt with after that. It was a clear, no one's going to bring any weapons. No one's going to do anything like that. We're just going to throw hands because it was like he just felt disrespected, which it was over. And that was stupid because it was over a girl I did not like at all. Actually, I despise her. I did not like her at all. But he thought that she liked me. But I got my parents involved, and I had to put my pride to the side because there's just some things that are more important. Like, I don't know, the rest of your life, for example. And now, and the aspect that I think a lot of people probably aren't thinking about is like, I can't speak for the case analysis case as much, but the Carmelo case, like he has to sit with it on his soul now, on his heart, that he took another kid's life. So like, that's something else that he's always like the counseling. They talked about that. Part of that money that they fundraise is for the counseling, that regardless of the outcome of this case, he's going to need that because he took a kid's life. He took another person's life. And that's the thing. If you're not like, he's not a killer, probably like he killed somebody, but that doesn't make him a killer. And that's something that's going to have to sit with on himself for the rest of his life. And that's not easy either. So just stop and think. For the love of God, like just stop and think.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, we won't know what's going to happen until the trial for both of those cases. But I wanted to mention both of those cases, you guys, so that people do realize that somewhat similar situation, same state, around the same time. And I just wanted to let you know that the corporate media is choosing to focus on the Carmelo Anthony case because they do want a racial division. So
and independent media, because I was looking when you mentioned the case in that Allison case, I was like waiting, like, oh, let me look up what these people are saying about that. Like, what is Tim Pool saying about this? What is Benny Johnson? None of them have mentioned this case. And I was like, bro, it is almost damn near identical, except for, what race was involved in what and who was claiming self-defense. It's almost identical, except for a white kid stabbed a brown kid. And it's like, okay, so what happened to the culture that created this? Like that's what that guy just said, right? You don't want to stand up. You're weak for not standing up to the culture that created this. You're being weak. You're creating more Austin Metcalf. The audacity of that motherfucker to say that shit. Bro, if I was his dad, let me not say that. I'm trying to encourage the peace. But if I was his dad, I'm creating more. My son was just killed, and now you're saying because I'm saying I don't want racial division. No, I'm actually trying to prevent anything that could be perceived as a racial divide, because this shit could lead to more violence. Because we don't know, once again, because of how much people consume independent media, for better or for worse. We don't know how many kids are at school talking on some race war shit now. We don't know what's happening. It could be bad. And there could be a fight. There could be some beef between these schools now. And that could be based in race, which is why the father was like, you're part of the fucking problem. Because these kids were not fighting because of that. But now there could be more deaths and more violence because of that with these young kids because of you. Even though that's not what this was about by any means.
Mm. Well, Niko, thank you so much for coming on. Anything you got coming up?
Just the same show. Follow me on For the People podcast. You can look me up, Niko House, on Twitter, at Real Niko House. On Instagram, same thing, at Real Niko House. And of course, as always, follow Hotspot, guys. Hotspot. We've been killing it lately. We've been doing some crazy, crazy work because unfortunately, there's a lot of crazy news out there, bro. Like it's too much. It's too much. We try to cover it all, but hey, at least you come to Hotspot, we're gonna give you the truth. So come check us out over there. Anything
you want to announce?
Yeah, man. So I'm gonna be a little bit busier, in about 8 or 9 months, because not 8 or 9 months, about 7 months. I'm having another baby. Yeah, man. We spit another one out. It's crazy. I'm about to be a dad again. I'm excited though. I'm happy. I'm really happy. Yeah.
We're dropping a beat for you, Niko.
Hey! Yo, and back to back.
Niko,
look, I'm like Robin Hood. I'm like Robin Hood with the aim, y'all. I'm like Robin Hood with the aim. Yeah. Yeah, the whole family's happy. About to have another Brazilian, a little Brazilian American up in here. Y'all. I need all y'all positive. I need a girl. I need a princess. I need a princess to spoil that will never leave me and will never need another man in her life. She won't move out until she's 66. That's my goal. So, so I got 2 boys, and I'm like, bro, I can't handle. If I could get a third boy, like. My 2 boys be breaking everything in my house now. My damn baby somehow kicked my motorcycle over today. He's like 1. I don't know how that happened. We were just upstairs, and my oldest runs upstairs. Lodge just kicked down your motorcycle. I was like, excuse me? Yeah, he kicked down a motorcycle. I'm like, how did he kick down a motorcycle? I don't even know how we even get to that situation. well, he was climbing over something and he climbed on top, or was trying to climb on top of it. And I'm like, and nobody stopped him? Like, what is going on else? Why was he outside? Like this, so because his aunt was here. I was like, no, there's so much. Like, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, I can't do that. Like my daughter is gonna hang out with daddy, be all cool, and until she's maybe like 15, and we'll see what happens if she go crazy or not. But I'm gonna enjoy them first few years as long as I can for sure.
All right, Niko, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabs. Appreciate you.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Niko House. Great convo there. If you're just joining, the theme tonight is law and order. I think that'll all make sense when we get to the rest of the stories here, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't done so, please be sure to smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. We're going to go ahead and go to the patrons. I want to give them a shout out. We'll get to the rest of the news stories today. Again, I hope you're enjoying your Easter. If not your Easter, your 420, or just hanging out with me. I don't know. Whatever you celebrate. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, doing the damn thing because they do. And don't forget about those Sabbies hanging in there, holding down the fort. And we also have members. All of their names are listed here, ladies and gents, and you can see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker for your viewing pleasure. We want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Lou Israel, Alina, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and Ama Robin. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you, fam. Appreciate you. Let's go to some of the comments. Doing pretty good on time, folks. Thank you, Jay. Hi, Sabby. Wanted to drop in real quick to wish you and brother Niko a happy Easter. Thank you so much. Thank you, Wandy. Sabby and Niko, hi, chats. Mr. D says, hey, Sabby, I stay 5 miles from Bob Jones. Oh, so you're familiar. Mentoring says, Sabby, how can I push back when people say the Dems can't do anything because they're not in power? Please be specific because I want to provide receipts. Thank you. Well, for example, what Senator Chris Van Hollen did, which we're about to get into in just a second, that's an example of something that they could be doing, right? They could be participating in some of these protests. Like they could be more vocal, like something like that. They could be saying, you know what, we're going to start something to get these Congress members out of office who are voting for these policies that we are very much against. But the statement from Hakeem Jeffries to just say, well, we can't do anything. No, that's not what people want to hear right now. Thank you, Nasmata. Everyone refers to the Irish potato famine. It was a genocide by the Brits. Thank you, Ms. Casey. I teach U.S. and Black history. I'm still learning things as I continually add to my curriculum. The government wants us to be stupid, divided, and exploitable. This is true. And shout out to Ms. Casey for becoming a Sabby member. Give them, or I don't know if it's a him or her, give them a big whoop, whoop. HMM said, scared to let my son out. I said this too. I was like, if I have kids, I don't know if I want them to go to school outside of the house. Like, I think I may want to homeschool them. And people are like, Sabby, you can't be like that. Thank you. Pitchforks Are Coming, who's been a member for 28 months. What will it take to start a revolution? Financial collapse. Plain and simple. Financial collapse. Everyone would have to be, pretty much everyone's part of 99% would have to be affected. Like things are bad now, but we haven't hit rock bottom yet. Thank you, Louise. I worked in Vietnam for several years. I felt safer when I moved to DC. No joke. Yeah, parts of Fayetteville can get lit. I'm telling you. And thank you, Philip, who's been a member for 2 months. Stanford Prison Experiment. Wave Classroom Experiment. No school accountability for choosing to create a hell for these teenagers. And thank you, 100 Black Roke, for love and crown. Thank you. Let's get the comment on Rumble. Thank you, Mara Rose. Interesting how you can be anti-Semitic when not supporting Izzy. Hello, Palestinians are Semites. Exactly. Exactly. And thank you, Dave, for the comment on Rumble. Thanks, Sabby and Niko House. Good coverage here. You are welcome. Welcome. And we're going to get into this next story. So people are asking, how can Democrats fight back? And I think this is an example. I did not expect this from Senator Van Hollen, of all people. Definitely didn't have this on my radar. But he took an initiative to go to El Salvador to speak to Abrego. Abrego is the young man from Maryland that was deported to the El Salvador prison. He's the one that Donald Trump says is a part of the MS-13 gang. The Supreme Court said this is not the case and that he needs to come back to the U.S. and face due process. Trump and, of course, El Salvador's president said there's nothing that they can do. I told you that's false. The U.S. government is paying El Salvador right now millions of dollars to have that prison, to keep people there. So you do have to understand, if you follow the money, you'll see what this is really all about. But Chris Van Hollen did go there. I want to bring this up here. He had a press conference right after. Let's get into a little bit of this, where the family members are present, and then we'll get into these statements from Donald Trump.
It's good to be home. Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too. We're joined by his wife, Jennifer, by his mother, Cecilia, by his brother, Cesar, and thank all of the rest of you who are joining us in solidarity with the Constitution and Kilmar. Look, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I want to be as clear as possible about what this is about and what it's not about. So I'm going to read the remarks that I wrote on the plane ride home. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. And it's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
Yes.
The Fourth Circuit put it very clearly in its strong opinion yesterday, and I quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it is not hard at all. The government, in this case, the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from the courthouses still hold dear."
Plus, also, Chris Van Hollen is living proof. See how easily it was for him to go there, right? So obviously, like I said, the Supreme Court said you have to bring him back and he has to face due process here in the U.S. They could bring him back if they wanted to, right? Now, Chris Van Hollen, like I said, he's usually not the type of politician to go out and do something like this. He usually kind of just skirts by, but he does represent the state of Maryland, and I would think he may have a re-election coming up pretty soon. So keep that in mind. But it's interesting, the people who are silent or are just not around, right? This is Abrego right here. You can see the image. We'll get a closer up when we go to the next clip. But this is Van Hollen meeting with him here.
They summed up the issue at stake perfectly. And that's why the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Now, the Trump administration wants to flat out lie about what this case is about. They want to change the subject. They want to make it about something else. And they are flouting the orders from the Federal District Court, the Fourth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court to facilitate his return. That's why I traveled to El Salvador, leaving here on Wednesday. And I want to express my gratitude to members of my family and members of my staff who agreed that we all must be prepared to take risks because of the current risk to our Constitution itself.
Okay, so we're not going to go into that entire speech. It is fairly long, but as you can see, the theme, again, I said, is law and order. And you see Chris Van Hollen was the one to visit El Salvador, to go visit Abrego Garcia. Now, he was also on Face the Nation, and I want to show you something that the media has tried to do. The media tried to make it seem like when he went to that visit that they were sitting around just getting drunk, drinking margaritas. Guys, I'm telling you, there's nothing more deceptive than corporate media, right? Because whatever they put out there, most people tend to believe it. Now, there are people moving away from corporate media and seeking out, other means, whether it's independent media on YouTube or Substack, right? But whoever gets the narrative out first is usually the one that people believe. And so if you're on the other side, you're basically playing defense, right? So listen to this. One of the images that they tried to portray.
I want to show our viewers some pictures that the president of El Salvador, Bukele, posted showing you and Abrego Garcia sitting around what appears to be margaritas. You have blamed him for trying to deceive people with props. After he posted those images, he also posted, quote, "I love chess." Do you have any concerns that the Salvadoran government used you as a pawn to make their point that Abrego Garcia is doing well and that he should stay where he is?
No, in fact, the El Salvadorian government tried really hard not to let me see him, but I think they realized that that was not a good look at the end of the day. I had press conferences in El Salvador with local press and made the point that El Salvador was violating international law by not allowing anyone to reach him, not his wife, not his lawyers, nobody. They realized that was a bad look. So I'm glad I met him. That was the purpose of my visit. They go to great lengths to deceive people. And that's what you saw, because they got these government guys essentially told the waiters to bring these drinks that appear to look like margaritas to the table. No one touched them. I can go into the details about how their whole scheme was set up. But the reality is, if you look at the photos when I first sat down and the ones at the end, you can see that that was all staged. They're trying to create the impression that, this is a guy in paradise, when in fact he's been in one of the most notorious prisons in the world.
I want to show.
So you see the narrative that they're trying to get out there, right? Like, oh, he went to go visit Abrego and they sat around getting drunk, drinking margaritas and all this stuff. Like, again, a story can tell 1,000 lies if you let it. And I noticed this. I thought this was pretty interesting. I had the railroad workers on this show when they were trying to go on strike. This bulletin came through. I still get their emails. Special bulletin, RWU resolution to bring Brother Kilmar home. This is coming from the Railroad Workers United. So they are calling for his release. It says the International Steering Committee of Railroad Workers United passed a resolution to bring home Brother Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a legally protected immigrant and SMART union member. So this is something I don't know if everyone's aware of. He's a member of the union. He's a union member. Kilmar was deported by the Trump administration without due process to a Salvadorian mega prison, despite holding legal protections still in place at the time of his apprehension by ICE. It goes on to say here, the SMART union, Kilmar's community, and his allies are demanding Kilmar's safe return, an end to his and his family's suffering, and a defense of due process, the foundation of fair treatment on and off the job. RWU stands in solidarity with this call and urges all union members to defend the rights of workers born outside the U.S. who are now so unjustly targeted. So that's from the Railroad Workers United, ladies and gentlemen. So I was kind of shocked when I got that email from them, because I'm still on their email list from when they were on the show before. But let's get into some of the other things. There are other stories that have come out about Abrego. I think we need to share those as well. One accusing him of beating his wife, another one accusing him of trafficking, and then we'll get into this picture.
Joining us now, NBC News
that Donald Trump floated around about the tattoos. Listen to this.
Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney and NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuaid, and New York Times reporter Jeremy Peters. Ken, we'll start off with you. What do these documents released yesterday prove or not when it comes to what we know and still don't know about Abrego Garcia's criminal history?
Well, they don't say anything about a criminal history, Allie. They do speak to the fact that he may have been detained in a murder investigation some period back, although he disputes that. And they show that his wife filed a civil restraining order in connection with domestic violence allegations, and then later dropped that case. But what these documents do is shed light on why the Prince George's County Gang Unit and the Department of Homeland Security believed that he is an MS-13 gang member. And they lay out a series of pieces of evidence. One, that he was arrested at a Home Depot alongside a confirmed gang member with a violent record. Two, that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie that had insignia on it that the Prince George's County Police believed was associated with a gang.
Why is it always Chicago Bulls? Can someone answer that one for me? It's always the Bulls.
And so it sort of fills out the picture a little bit more about why not only an immigration judge, but an appeal in the immigration system determined that there was sufficient evidence that he was an MS-13 gang member. Now, obviously, he disputes that. His lawyers dispute that. And immigration courts are not criminal courts. There was no proof beyond a reasonable doubt here. But the question of whether he's deportable is not a question of whether he's a criminal. Those are two separate things. If the Department of Homeland Security determined that he was an MS-13 gang member and he was in the country illegally, then he was deportable. Whether he should be in a prison in El Salvador is another question here. But these documents do shed light on why DHS believes he is an MS-13 gang member.
This wouldn't even be an issue if we just followed due process, right? We wouldn't even hear about this story. This wouldn't even be an issue if we just followed due process in this country. You wouldn't even hear about Abrego right now. Just keeping it real. Because if he would have gone through the process, then they would have said, oh, okay, it looks like documentation shows that either you are protected or you're not protected. And that would have been the end of it. But here we are. We'll go on a little bit more here.
And Kelly, there had been many questions about why it took so long for DOJ and DHS to release these documents. Ultimately, they did it last night. But why now?
Well, it's an interesting question because clearly these documents were in the possession, were a part of the kind of planning of this case, and presumably could have been released earlier. It may be that they felt enough public pressure because of the interest in this case, the questions being raised, the way that Abrego Garcia and his family, the advocates for him, had positioned him. They do a lot of scrutiny here from the White House about Maryland man when they want to argue that he is unlawfully formally a resident of Maryland and won't come back. So perhaps the timing was to counter some of that, to try to recapture a bit of the narrative. But we don't have a specific answer as to why they did not produce that information immediately, because certainly those questions were asked every day by reporters and others involved to look for more information about why he had been swept up in this and what was the basis, especially because of the rhetoric from the administration where they called him not only a member of MS-13, but a foreign terrorist because of the designation the administration has put on MS-13. They accused him of being involved in human trafficking, a lot of things that are very potent words in the political climate. And they didn't have specific information to back that up. So it may have been a response to the public pressure. It certainly fills in some of the picture, and people will take from that what they want to make of his status. And certainly there is the ongoing pressure from people like Senator Van Hollen, of Democrat of Maryland, who are trying to keep this in the public eye.
They probably really should have had that information handy. This is hilarious. Birdfinger says, if they deport Scottie Pippen, I'm revolting. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this I think could have been cleared up if they would have shown that information, I don't know, like in the beginning and not now. And then there's this take here from Donald Trump. Now, this picture is going pretty wild on social media. Let's go ahead and bring this in. Trump's tattoo theory to prove MS-13 gang ties. What experts say about president's renewed focus on ink. So Donald Trump posted this picture, and I don't know, can I click on the picture? No, I'm sorry. But he posted this photo. Let's see how much bigger I can make it. I hate this kind of website. Sorry, guys. Of the hand. I guess it's supposed to be Abrego's hand, and it has a series of tattoos. Oh, thank you, Eric. A series of tattoos on his hand. You see this, right? And then this part right here, there are letters. There's MS-13, so MS-13. That is not on his hand. That are those letters there were obviously photoshopped. I saw some people on social media didn't realize that. Like they thought those, they were like, look, he has the letters on his hand. I'm like, no, that's a Photoshop. That's Donald Trump, I guess, trying to tell you this symbol means M, this means S, this means 1, this means 3, etc. So this started quite a buzz, right? And I just want to show you what the experts are saying here. It says that experts say the practice is flawed and misleading. So it goes into the case here. It says that this is the hand of the man that Democrats feel should be brought back into the United States because he is such a fine and innocent person. They said he is not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. So again, as I was saying, he does not have the words, the letters MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. That is a Photoshop. The tattoos, he does have tattoos on his knuckles, but not those letters. So I just wanted to make that clear. But this is what the law enforcement is saying, okay? Multiple law enforcement officials and experts have warned against Trump's administration growing reliance on tattoos to determine gang affiliation, especially in the case of Venezuelan gang Tren de Arruga. A tattoo itself is never sufficient evidence to prove a person is a member of a criminal group. That's coming from Joseph Kinney. He's the chief of detectives at the NYPD. Goes on to say here, court documents and investigative reports indicate that U.S. immigration officials are now using a 10-point scoring system under an internal guide, where gang-related tattoos can earn 4 points to determine deportability under the Alien Enemies Act. 8 points are sufficient for expedient removal without a hearing. So you see this? 8 points is required to have an expedited removal without a hearing. In one case, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, a Venezuelan makeup artist, was deported to El Salvador based solely on tattoos that read mom and dad inside crowns, according to the New York Times report. While tattoos such as clocks, skulls, and train imagery have been linked to Tren de Arruga, the 5 Venezuelan experts, including police officials, academics, and a journalist, told the New York Times that tattoos are not formal indicators of gang membership in Venezuelan street culture, where ink is common among young men regardless of affiliation. So again, when we talk about law and order, none of this would have been an issue if due process would have been followed. Then you wouldn't even have this, well, should he be in El Salvador? Should he not? Like, you wouldn't even have that as a question if due process was followed. And I'm greatly, greatly concerned. And I brought this up before. Right now, the attack is on those that may or may not be here illegally, may or may not have participated in criminal activity. But what's stopping Donald Trump's administration from going after what they consider to be domestic terrorists? That could include people that were part of the pro-Palestinian marches. That could include people that were part of BLM. You just don't know. You don't know how far this is going to go. So I think if law and order were followed properly, we wouldn't even have the situation to begin with. Let's get to the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Trash Panda says General Strike. The Oracle said if the Dems had any real connection to the working class, leading in this moment would be intuitive. Thank you, P. Smith. What about innocent Blacks in the USA prisons? That's a good question, right? Of course, they're not trying to have that happen. They're not trying to have that happen, right? There's a whole Innocence Project that tries to release prisoners that they believe are wrongfully imprisoned because the government is not trying to do that. Angie said, HMM, I saw Sinners. It was amazing. Yeah, I want to see it. I haven't seen it yet. And everyone says it's really good. So maybe I'll get to see it this week. If you have seen Sinners and you like it as well, let me know, in the chat. But so far, people are saying it's pretty good. So I've been waiting for this one. I'm a big movie buff. If you're a newbie and you don't know anything about me, I love movies. That is my thing. Okay. All right. Okay. We got to get to this Oprah story because I just can't. Oh boy. Oprah Winfrey has been subpoenaed by Drew Dixon. This is the woman that has accused Russell Simmons of sexual assault. Now, Drew has come forward about this years ago. She's done a number of interviews talking about this particular assault and her time working with Russell Simmons. So this is not new. I want to be very clear. Drew Dixon came out about this years ago. And along the way, she found that there were other women who are also accusing Russell Simmons as well. It's really interesting because I saw the picture of them and they all have something in common. They all kind of look like Drew. So it seems like there is a type that he may like. Russell Simmons is big music mogul. He founded Run DMC. For those who are not aware, he's been involved in the music business for a long, long time. And I want to start out with Drew talking about Oprah Winfrey first. This is going to take us through a timeline because I want to end with what Whitney Webb warned us about in that article that I just covered a couple of days ago. All of this is connected. It's not just about Drew Dixon. It's not just about Oprah being subpoenaed. And we're going to connect those dots here today. So a while back, 4 years ago, Drew Dixon talked about what happened with Russell Simmons, what she alleged happened. But part of this conversation here that she had with For Harriet, she gets into this part here about Oprah Winfrey. And I think this is the part people need to hear. Apparently at this time, she found out that Oprah Winfrey was going to participate in the documentary of the accusers. The documentary, I believe, is called, I have to look it back up. Sorry, we'll get to it. On the record. And she wanted to be a part of it. She wanted to participate. And then somewhere along the way, she ends up backing out. Let's get into that part first. We'll start there and we'll land with Whitney Webb. Listen to this.
Yeah, so let's move on to Oprah. You alluded to Oprah's initial involvement in this documentary. And I think that's how a lot of us kind of found out that this was going to be made when she signed on to be a producer and that this was going to be distributed on Apple TV Plus. I think that's the name of the platform. But then a day before, I believe, or maybe a couple of days before it was supposed to premiere at Sundance, was it one day or more than that?
15 days.
Okay, so a couple of weeks before this was set to premiere at Sundance, Oprah came out and said that she was no longer going to be attaching her name to it. She went on TV and said it was because of creative differences with the directors of the film. And then later, she actually came out and said that she felt like some of your testimony in the film, your recollection of events, she felt like there were some inconsistencies. And I wonder how hurtful that was for you.
That was excruciating. That was deeply, deeply painful for me. It was almost like my greatest fear in doing this in the first place played itself out in the way the most powerful Black woman, maybe in the world, certainly in entertainment, was standing up for us. And then the very thing I feared, which was this charge of disloyalty to the race and of abandonment of Black men, you know, in light of all of the ways they're falsely accused and vilified, was somehow the rationale for attacking her. So that was painful, watching her be attacked.
Let me pause here for a second. The way that I saw this was that Oprah was looking to protect herself. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. People have to realize how much it took for someone like Drew Dixon to come forward in the first place. Right? Like, obviously coming forward to say that someone as powerful and as popular as Russell Simmons attacked you, like did this to you, obviously most people are not going to be on your side. And then you find out that Oprah, of all people, wants to be a part of the documentary of yourself and other survivors that are also coming forward. Then you find out she wants to pull out because she feels like there's inconsistencies in your story. I don't believe it was because she thought there were inconsistencies. I think that Oprah wanted to detach herself from this at that point in time as much as possible to protect herself. Like I said, these people are very powerful. When we talked about the Whitney Webb's article about the Diddy Epstein connection, don't forget Russell Simmons was also in that article. All of these people are connected, guys. And so some people, they don't want to, mess up like their social circle. They also, I believe, some of these other people also are being blackmailed. I don't think it's just Epstein and Diddy that have been, maybe working for other people like Clive Davis, et cetera, and had blackmail. I believe that there's a lot of people in Hollywood that have been blackmailed. I believe somebody somewhere in Hollywood has something on everybody, except for those who choose not to partake in the Hollywood social circles, the people that don't live there, right? So like they're actors and actresses, but they choose to live in like Montana or something like that. I really do believe. Let me let her go on a little bit more.
Was painful. I never met her. I was told meet her sort of at some point. She was going to interview me maybe. And I don't know. That's what I was told. I have no idea really. So I was devastated to watch her take that incoming. I really hated to see that. But I never, ever in a million years thought she would leave. It was like this fairy godmother. I thought we'd been rescued. And I actually, at one point, when she was being attacked by 50 Cent and Russell on social media, I downloaded the picture of Gayle King sitting there while R. Kelly attacks her, and I made it my screensaver on my phone to reassure myself, these women are not going anywhere. You couldn't be in better hands. And, and then we found out on January 10th at, I think it was 6:20 p.m., that she was exiting the project and she was taking Apple TV with her. And I was in the fetal position in my apartment for 3 days. It was literally my worst fear was playing itself out with this woman I admired and this man that I had admired. And I just couldn't believe that it was coming down to this. And so we went to Sundance terrified, Sherry, Salai, and myself with the filmmakers. We stood there not knowing if the film would ever be seen by anyone beyond the, 500 people in the theater at the premiere. And yes, I did read that she said there were inconsistencies in my story. I have no idea what she's talking about. I literally have no idea what she's talking about. The story the New York Times wrote 2 years ago was a 3,000-word piece that not a soul has refuted in 2+ years. I have, friends that I told the story who told the exact same story to the New York Times 22 years later, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Those friendships don't always last. People move to LA, they move wherever, they leave the industry. I left the industry. Some of those people were not my close friends anymore. And I just gave their names to the New York Times and, hope that, for the best. I didn't know if they even remembered, and they did. And they were exactly consistent with what I said. And so it's hurtful. I also continue to admire her. I continue to regard her as a hero in the sense that what she's achieved against all of the odds is remarkable. And what she's done with her platform is remarkable. The Breonna Taylor billboards, the 26 Breonna Taylor billboards are amazing. And, Breonna Taylor on the cover of her magazine is amazing. And, I don't understand it. I, don't spend time thinking about things I can't control. I believe things happen for a reason. And I had to discover that I don't need to hide behind Oprah Winfrey. And Sherry doesn't need Oprah Winfrey. And Salai doesn't need Oprah Winfrey. And no survivor needs Oprah Winfrey. All we need is ourselves. And
I just want to pause it there. You guys can watch the rest of that if you want to. But that point there, no, you don't need Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it definitely helps if you have someone backing you that has the resources and the access that she does. But you don't, So what was interesting to me there is that she saw her as a hero. And I always caution people about that. Please don't look at people as heroes. Especially politicians. I've told you guys about that before, right? Don't look to people as, no, don't. People are human. People are flawed. We all are, right? So that was 4 years ago. Fast forward this year, and now Oprah Winfrey is being subpoenaed by Drew. Listen to this. Oprah Winfrey subpoenaed by Russell Simmons. I'm going to say sexual assault because YouTube, sexual assault accuser. In 2017, Drew Dixon first claimed that Russell Simmons assaulted her back in 1995. There's a picture here of Oprah. And this is Russell Simmons here with the bow tie. Let's go on. Let's get into this, folks. Oprah has been dragged into the Russell Simmons assault case by way of subpoena. Let's get on to this. According to Page Six, Drew Dixon has subpoenaed the former talk show host, pressuring Winfrey to present evidence supporting her claims in a defamation suit against the Def Jam mogul. The legal document obtained by the outlet details information that Dixon and her legal team are requesting from Winfrey, including all other tangible things that corroborate her claims. Dixon's docs also demand that the Color Purple entertainer appear in court to testify in her assault case against Simmons. So this is a big deal. They're asking her to testify. They're asking Oprah to take the stand and raise her hand. This is a big deal. I don't know if Oprah's going to be able to wiggle her way out of this. I don't know. I mean, you can't ignore a subpoena and just say, I don't see that. But I'm wondering if she may try to get out of testifying, right? It goes on to say the subpoena stems from the former Def Jam executive Drew Dixon, previously accusing Simmons in the New York Times piece of assaulting her in his apartment back in 1995. Simmons would respond to the claims in an interview with Graham Bissinger in 2024, during which he was asked about Dixon's claims. The Queens native asserted that he had never been forceful in any relationship and labeled every encounter he has had with women as consensual. Simmons then pondered rhetorically, could someone want notoriety in a market where people thirst for fame? And then here's a picture of Drew Dixon here. Now, I want you to hold on to that part because you may be wondering, well, where the hell is Russell Simmons? In Bali. Russell Simmons is not living in the United States. And that's what makes this even tricky, right? It makes it a little bit messy because he doesn't live here anymore. Some are saying that Russell Simmons left the country because of these allegations. It's not just Drew Dixon. There are other women that came forward about Russell Simmons. So let's show this part here. Russell Simmons on living in Bali amid lawsuits. Never had any reason to feel unsafe in America. Now let's get into this. Again, there's Russell Simmons again there. Russell Simmons has lived in Bali since 2018, but he swears that the relocation doesn't mean he's been hiding out from allegations of sexual misconduct and sexual assault. The Def Jam Recordings founder issued a statement to All Hip Hop posted on Friday, May 24th, in which he insisted that rumors of him being unable to freely return to the U.S. are false. People saying that somehow I can't come home when I'm there all the time wears on you. Simmons told the outlet, "It wears on me a while to keep hearing the same narrative, which is false. I'm always in LA. I'm always in New York and Miami, and I've never had any reason to feel unsafe in America." Also, sharing that he doesn't intend to live in New York again, Simmons acknowledged that he previously lived in California for 9 years and currently pays non-resident state taxes. "I am not physically present in New York, and I do not have any intention to live in New York in the future." So, Russell is not here. And it goes on to say here, I do want people to see this part as well. "I own no property taxes in the US. I have been living in Bali since 2018, which is where I intend to remain for at least 9 years. Before I moved to Bali, I lived in California. As a California resident, I paid California resident taxes in the years immediately prior to moving to Bali. Currently, I pay California non-resident state taxes. As multiple women have accused Simmons of sexual assault and harassment, the Queens native has vehemently denied the allegations, although music executive Drew Dixon has in the past alleged that Simmons sexually assaulted her in 1995. She tackled the alleged incident in 2020's HBO documentary On the Record, also suing Simmons for defamation in February, a suit Simmons has sought to be dismissed. Now, this is where it gets kind of spooky, right? Because I'm telling you, this is all connected. Because we're making our way to Whitney Webb's article. I just want you to understand who Drew was around. You see, there's another interview here where she talks about the inner workings. And she also brings up in this particular segment that Russell Simmons, she alleged, apologized to her. I kid you not. Listen to this.
I did read something where I felt like at one point, did you guys have a conversation where he kind of apologized to you?
Oh, he did. Yeah. So, I mean, Russell Simmons is the king of hip hop. So, as long as I was still in the music industry, I was bound to run into him. So that happened quite often. But there was one particular time when I was at an event with Clive Davis, and I often would be out with Clive. If Clive was out, I was sort of at his side. Keith Naftali, Peter Edge, and I were kind of like often right there with him.
Pause. Ding, 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 ding. There's a name that you've heard before. You heard me mention it a couple days ago. Clive Davis. Is everybody connecting the dots? This particular time she was out with Clive Davis, but she also goes on to say that it wasn't unusual, obviously, for her to be around Clive Davis. I mean, all these people work together. Remember what I told you about Clive Davis? Remember what we read in Whitney's article about Clive Davis, that he was who? Diddy's mentor, that he groomed Diddy. Let's continue.
And we were at some event, and I got up and I walked away from the table where I was sitting with Clive, and I was sort of like walking through the crowd, maybe near the stage. I'm not even sure what the event was anymore. But Russell tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was like, seeing a ghost. I mean, I would see him around, but I obviously was always unpleasant. But I always had to have my poker face because he's still Russell Simmons, and I didn't want him to be an enemy. Wow. And he said, "I just wanted to let you know that I'm sorry And I do yoga now, and I have daughters now, and I realize it was fucked up. I'm just sorry, and I hope we can be cool. And I was just like, we're cool. We're cool. The last thing I wanted was beef with Russell Simmons.
Right.
I mean, even though I was doing well at Arista and was working with Clive, Russell Simmons was way more powerful than I was.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't afford that. And there was also another point where I was involved in Arista's acquisition of Profile Records. And Run DMC is really the biggest artist on Profile Records.
Mm-hmm.
And Leor Cohen had actually called me about that deal and sort of was fishing to find out if I was going to be a problem for Joey Simmons' run because of what happened. And I was like, no, I'm cool. Like, I would be thrilled to work with Run DMC. I love Run DMC. I'd be honored. It's all good. And then I saw Russell again kind of around that time. And I said, I just want to let you know, like, I would love to work with your brother, and it's all good. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, what am I gonna do? He's Russell Simmons.
Yeah.
So she alleges that he apologized to her. That's her, little her spiel about that there. Again, I keep saying alleges because y'all ain't coming after me. You guys are not coming after me. Okay. So I got to make sure I say alleges. But when we talk about law and order here, I just want to connect the final dots. Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, and it brings us right back to Whitney Webb's article, One Label Under Blackmail, the Early Intersections of Diddy and the Epstein Network. We are going to fast forward here to the Russell Simmons part. I'm not going to read this again. We went through this. So if you're new, you can find that Whitney Webb clip where I covered the Diddy stuff when we get to the Clive Davis part. So again, there's the section about Clive Davis. And we want the part of the mentors. Let's get to that section. You can tell I spent some time reading this article because I already know where the sections are now. Mentors in crime. Mentors in crime. After the scandal around Combs began to break, Clive Davis, as well as Andre Harrell of Uptown and Russell Simmons of Def Jam, have been accused of propelling Combs into patterns of criminal behavior for which he is now infamous. For instance, one-time rival and former friend of Combs, Suge Knight, has claimed that Davis, Harrell, and Russell Simmons use alcohol, drugs, specifically cocaine, to compromise Combs' manhood. Did everybody hear what I just said? Is everybody connecting the dots now? This is particularly significant in the case of Davis' ties to Drugola scandal, which involved using sex, drugs, and bribes to specifically target Black-oriented radio stations and music. Everybody connecting the dots? Why do we keep ending up back to the same people? Every time we get into these stories, we're ending up back to Epstein, Diddy, Clive Davis, one of them. So even when we talk about Russell Simmons and what Drew Dixon is alleging, I just had to take you back to the statement from Suge Knight that Russell Simmons, along with Clive Davis and Andre Harrell, compromised Diddy's manhood. We are looking at what could potentially be a giant organization of trafficking and assault. Connect the dots. So whether or not you're sure if you believe Drew or not, one thing I think we can all follow is that there seems to be a pattern. Seems to be a little bit of a pattern here. Just a little bit. Now, as you'll also see, Arista Records, that's who she was working for. So she was working with Clive Davis, Russell Simmons. Clive Davis owned Arista Records. So all of the people are together. Listen to this. Knight has argued that Davis, Simmons, and Harrell first compromised Combs, and then Combs went on to use alcohol, drugs, and gay sex to control younger artists like Usher and Bieber. Notably, Combs' entry into the world of Andre Harrell, Simmons, and shortly thereafter Clive Davis coincides with the development of his obsessive drive to record everything, presumably for blackmail purposes. What'd I tell you guys about the blackmail? I really do believe, and people can take it any kind of way they want to. If you haven't read this article by Whitney by now, pick a Saturday, spend some time and read it. You can see even at the very beginning of the article, who's the picture of. Russell Simmons is right here on the right. You know what I was just thinking about for a second? Kimora Lee. Kimora Lee Simmons, who was Russell Simmons' wife. Don't forget when he met Kimora Lee. Kimora Lee was a model. She was a model as a teenager. He met her when she was a teenager. There's a pattern. I don't know if he's in Bali. I can't confirm that he's in Bali to avoid these cases. I don't know. But the fact that Oprah has now been subpoenaed for this particular case, that tells me there's something that Oprah knows and that Drew knows she knows, and Drew wants her to tell on the stand. And that's why I'm asking this question, guys. Do you think that Oprah will find a way to get out of it, to get out of testifying? Because you can't sit up there and lie under oath. And if Drew has proof, if Oprah were to lie and Drew has proof that she's lying, that's bad for Oprah. Honestly, if Oprah testifies, it's bad for Oprah. If Oprah doesn't testify, it's bad for Oprah. Oprah is screwed. But that tells me that Drew either knows or believes that there's something that Oprah does know about this particular situation, this particular maybe assault, and that's why she was subpoenaed. Crazy times, man, crazy times. Let's go to some of the comments here. We can go to part 2. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Louise. Sinners was incredible. Michael B. Jordan ×2. Yes, please. The whole cast was fantastic. Okay. I want to see it. That's the next one on my list. Sunlight said, Oprah is cool with Harvey Weinstein. Enough said. Skylar said, the higher up you go in entertainment, the smaller that circle gets. Yeah, you're right about that. Miranda said, this has been done before Russell. Please, is it just by chance that he left in 2018 when Me Too was taking off? That's a good point. Truth Bearer says, Kimora was groomed for that role allegedly. Are you putting the allegedly? You're cute, Truth Bearer. Truth Bearer is like, let me put in allegedly too, because you know, I don't want them coming after me either. Okay, so guys, don't miss Tuesday night show because it's been, I think about 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks since I've done a deep dive. I'm going to do a deep dive Tuesday night about Judy Garland and Hollywood abuse. Don't miss that one. That's going to be a good one. I've been working on that one for quite some bit. Okay, let's get to the next story, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't done so, smash the like button. Thank you. And we're moving on to this Florida State University story. If you guys haven't heard by now, there was another school shooting at Florida State University this time around. I don't even get surprised. I'm not even surprised by these school shootings anymore. That's how commonplace it has become in the United States. And that's the sad part, but it's the reality with the country that we live in. Again, the theme is law and order. We're going to get started with this. I have some information about the suspect and why I think this may have been done and where we can go from here. Let's go ahead and dive into this clip here.
But we begin tonight with breaking news and another mass shooting in this country, this time at Florida State University in Tallahassee. 2 people are now dead. We know that they are not students, 6 others injured. Investigators have not revealed any other details about those victims.
More gun insanity in this country. Authorities say the shooter is in custody. 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, a student at the university. He is also hospitalized. Police say he used a gun belonging to his mother, who is a sheriff's deputy. They say he had access to her weapons.
Investigators say he opened fire near the student union. When officers arrived, they immediately found the gunman. When he refused to comply, he was shot. Video from earlier today shows students in that all too familiar and tragic scene of being escorted to safety with their hands up. Terrifying moments for everyone on campus.
The shots rang out, and we were like, is that construction going on, or what was happening? And I remember looking outside and hearing 5 more shots go off.
I see these group of girls crying, really upset, walking back from the student union, told me they heard gunshots, and they just ran and came back to their apartment where I was walking to.
Accounts of so many young people, hard to hear for sure. Eyewitness News anchor Mike Marza here now with more. Mike?
Bill and Liz.
This is the sad part about all of this is that, again, it's the same story every time. However, in this particular situation, the shooter is alive. And a lot of times when these school shootings happen, the killer will unalive themselves. That didn't happen in this particular case. They did shoot him. He is injured, but he is alive. So a little bit different. And think about where this takes place, right? So you had the Parkland school shooting. I did see an article. There was another Parkland school shooter survivor who was also at this campus as well. Imagine going through that twice.
Imagine getting those alerts on your phone and being a parent half a country away. Calling the scene horrific. That's what cops are doing tonight. Investigators say, yes, the son of a sheriff's deputy started shooting at the student union just before noon. Police identifying the alleged shooter as, again, 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, a current FSU student and the son of a current Leon County sheriff's deputy. Police rushing to the scene. They say they confronted the shooter and shot him when they say that he refused their commands. You can sort of make out the bottom of his shoe or boot in the ambulance, and police putting him in shackles. We're told he suffered non-life-threatening injuries after being shot by police. But when cops got to campus, students, some of them started running out of the buildings. Some described a threat alarm going off. Some, of course, were crying, using backpacks as shields in school. The accused shooter, described as a long-standing member of the Leon County Sheriff's Office Youth Advisory Council and participated in training programs. Again, his mom, a sheriff's deputy, has been with the sheriff's office for 18 years.
So this is the son of a deputy, and now we know where he got his training, right? So for people who are wondering, where did he get his gun? Now we know where he got his training as well.
Investigators say her training weapon was found at the shooting scene.
Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons, and that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene. The alleged shooter was also a long-standing member of the Leon County Sheriff's Office Citizen Advisory or Youth Advisory Council.
Pause. We have to go back to the mother's weapon. The question that I have about this particular case is the mother going to be charged? Some of you may be wondering why I'm asking that question. There was a case many years ago in Maryland where this happened, where a officer had their weapon in their house and a family member decided to take that weapon and used it to kill someone. The officer went to jail. Believe it or not, the officer actually went to jail because apparently his firearm was neglected. So what I'm curious about is the mother going to face charges as well for leaving her weapon unattended? I don't know. Maybe in Florida, the laws may be different. Who knows? But I'm curious about that.
So he has been steeped in the Leon County Sheriff's Office family, engaged in a number of training programs that we have.
So far in 2025, there have been 81 mass shootings as of April 17th, including this latest one in Florida. By the way,
81 in this country in 2025. Guys, it's only April. The year just damn near started.
this is Florida's 6th mass shooting so far this year. The investigation continues, but we know classes and activities are canceled throughout the weekend. Bill.
All right, now let's go to a little bit more information here about the shooter, because it appears there's a little bit more about his background that I also want to get into. Apparently, he was accused of being a white supremacist. We'll get into all of that as well. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip here.
In our national lead, police say that the suspected shooter in Thursday's mass shooting at Florida State University in Tallahassee will, quote, face the charges up to and including first-degree murder. CNN's Brian Todd's following the story. Brian, are officials any closer to a motive, considering the suspect is currently not cooperating with police?
Jake, they appear no closer to establishing a motive tonight, but again, they're trying to question him. And as you mentioned, he has invoked his rights not to speak to police. So the motive really remains an outstanding question tonight. Here's what we do know about the suspect tonight. And this is information compiled by our CNN teams on the ground and by CNN's investigative unit. The suspect is named Phoenix Eichner. He's 20 years old. University officials confirm he is a junior at Florida State University. Authorities say he is the son of a local sheriff's deputy. Officials and records reviewed by CNN say that when he was taken into custody, Eichner was carrying a handgun that used to be the service weapon of a sheriff's deputy named Jessica Eichner. Jessica Eichner has not responded to CNN's request for comment. Authorities say that Phoenix Eichner spent time training with law enforcement and served on the Sheriff's Advisory Council in the years before the shooting. And according to CNN's John Miller, citing a law enforcement source familiar with the investigation, police recovered an AR-15 rifle inside the car that Eichner drove to campus, in addition to the handgun and the shotgun that were found near him. Now, according to court records, his biological mother, whose name is Anne Marie Erickson, was accused of taking him to Norway when he was 10 years old in violation of a custody agreement. The father, at one point, tried to modify a custody agreement, claiming that the biological mother left him in, quote, deplorable hygiene and that he looked like he hadn't slept enough. Tallahassee Police Chief Lawrence Revel said at this point there does not appear to be any connection between the alleged shooter and any of the victims. One Florida State student did tell CNN that Phoenix Eichner was asked to leave an extracurricular political group a couple of years ago due to unsettling behavior that he displayed there, Jake.
Pause. So no connection between him and the suspects. But one of the things that they mentioned there is that he's not cooperating with the police. So let that sink in. That's why they can't tell you what the motive was, because I guess he's pleading the fifth. Doesn't want to cooperate there.
What more do we know about the victims?
Right, we just got some new information this afternoon, Jake, on the victims. They are now identified as Robert Morales. He is an FSU graduate himself, according to his LinkedIn page, and he was an FSU employee. That's according to his older brother, Ricardo Morales. Heartbreakingly, Ricardo Morales chronicled on X his experience yesterday trying to find his brother, at one point posting, quote, waiting for a callback. Robert Morales leaves behind a wife and a daughter, according to his brother. And the other victim, Tiru Chaba, who worked for Aramark, a food and service and a facilities management company. He worked there at Florida State University. He is a 45-year-old father of two.
All right, Brian Todd, thanks so much. I want to bring in a gun safety advocate and vice chair of the Democrat.
Then they go to David Hogue, who also, of course, was a part of the Parkland ones. We're going to get to David for a different story, so I don't want to be showing David twice. But I want you to hear what this FSU student said. Apparently, he was in one of the school clubs with the shooter. Now, he breaks something down here. I want you guys to hear where he said that the rule that they had for this particular club was that you couldn't be a Nazi. So listen to this.
And then you find yourself in that locked room, the door handle jiggling, and the worst going through your mind.
Yeah. So, like you said, we had practiced active shooter drills in high school. It didn't really happen in college, but we did what we were taught to do. Like I said, we locked down the room, lights off, and doors closed, and we were just doing what we had become normal to do. It became normal to practice having a shooter on campus shooting my peers.
That's sad. That's insane what he just said there, that this is something that just became normal over time. Because you had to, I mean, it's crazy, you know, like imagine growing up during a time where you had to do tornado drills, earthquake drills, like we had tornado drills when I was in school. Then you move from that to active shooter drills. And he said this has become normal, something they were accustomed to doing. This country, it's the US. Other countries, they don't have mass shootings like we do. They don't have the number of mass shootings we do, if any at all. It's something about, it's this place. I want people to understand it's something about this country because the other countries don't have it.
The suspected shooter has been identified by police as an FSU student by the name of Phoenix Eichner. I know it's a big school. Did you happen to know him?
So I spent my first 2 years at Tallahassee, now called Tallahassee State College, but we called it TCC. And I was the president of a political talk group we called the Political Roundtable, and he joined the club when I was at TCC. Basically our only rule was no Nazis, colloquially speaking. And he espoused so much white supremacist rhetoric and far right rhetoric as well, to the point where we had to exercise that rule. I also know he was a member of the TCC Turning Point chapter. And since TCC, I have seen him in passing a couple times. Today, I was talking to a friend who had talked to him yesterday, or 2 days ago, pardon me. And he was talking about how he wasn't ready for exams.
To be clear, Reed, I just want to make sure that folks understand this. So you were a transfer student essentially into FSU, right? So you started the first 2 years in Tallahassee, and that is where you knew Phoenix Eichner, this suspected shooter here. And you say that he was essentially, it sounded like, kicked out of a political club that you were in because of his as you described them, views on white supremacy?
Yes, ma'am. So it wasn't necessarily a formal kicking out, but he was asked not to come back, and was really what had happened was we had, it was a debate back and forth. And after enough times, I mean, he did not feel welcome because he was not welcome with his rhetoric. We allow people of all, beliefs, creeds, whatever. And he somehow found a way to not fit the bill on everyone else.
Pause. I wanted you to hear that because I want to make a point. When you see all of the actions that are being implemented right now by the Trump administration to fight back against anti-Semitism, which the administration is basically saying, criticizing Israel, et cetera, like they're obviously taking this to extremes, right? When you see all the actions that are happening to fight back against that, even withholding money from prestigious universities, what action do you see implemented by the current administration and previous administrations to stop this shit? What actions by the current administration do you see being implemented and previous administrations to stop white supremacy? What actions? What about school shootings? I'll wait. sometimes there are issues that are put in front of us as a distraction, and the government and the media plays along with it. The State Department goes along with it to convince you that this is the most important issue of this time. But I think the people are waking up and they're starting not to fall for it. And I think that you see right now, Harvard rejecting and putting that rejection against Donald Trump. It needs to be done because this is the thing. If the government tells the media, which they do, if the government tells the media that this is the most important issue, the media tells the people it's the most important issue. Luckily, people are waking up and a lot more people are not falling for this. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. But this needs to be said. We've already had 81 mass shootings in this country since the start of the year. What actions has the current administration or the previous administrations done to stop that? Now, I'm not anti-gun. I'm not. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe you have a right to protect yourself. But I will say this. Something needs to change. Something is off. Something is really off with this country. Where we can't go a whole year, we can't go a month without a mass shooting in this country. Does everybody understand? We can't go 1 month without a mass shooting in this damn country. The kids are not all right. We have to stop saying they are. They're not. They're not. Who's committing most of the mass shootings? What's happening to the children? Where's the counseling? Where's the mental health? Where are these things? Oh, that's right. I forgot. We don't have universal health care. We don't have health care for everybody. So you don't have mental health care either. It's a package. This country is not okay. It really is. Like, this is insane. It's crazy how bad it has become. What goes through your mind when you wake up that morning and say, you're just going to go to a campus and just remember, they said there's no connection between him and the people that he killed. There's no connection. So it's this country, guys. It's something wrong. Now I want to make a point. How often do school shooters and mass shooters, how often in this country are they given the death penalty? Which I don't support. Let me be clear about that. I don't think it's right for us to decide. I don't support that. How often? Okay. The reason why I'm asking you that question is I want you to pay attention to what the government is doing. Right now, the Department of Justice is seeking the death penalty for Luigi Mangione, who I told you guys before, I'm still not convinced that's the same person in those pictures. Luigi is accused of killing healthcare CEO. One person, right? But mass shooters in this country walk on campus and can injure or kill multiple people, and you don't see the Justice Department give them the death penalty. Does everybody see what is going on? Now, again, the shooter is alive. He is refusing to cooperate with police. Again, that's why we said we still don't have a motive at all. But I don't know why this was done. But this case is a little bit different considering the fact that he is still alive, which is usually not the case for the most part. But the kids are not all right. Talk to your kids. I don't know what's going on, but the kids are not all right. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Pam says Judy Garland was a sad case. Yes. This is one I've been waiting to cover for quite a bit. I just had to get all my ducks in a row. Lou said Judy Garland case was horrific. Yes, it was. David said it's sad how desensitized to school shootings in general in this country. This is not normal. It's not. Like, even when I heard about it, I was like, oh, it's another, you know what I mean? Like, and thank you for this, David. We shouldn't have more guns than people. Thank you, Clarissa, who sends a super sticker. Thank you so much. It's crazy times, folks. All right, guys, we got one more story for you, and then I'm cutting out. Smash that like button. This one's a little bit different. I added this one last because it's not sad. That other one is sad, so we can't end on that, right? This one's a little crazy. Crazy. We're getting into James Carville. Some people call him the Crypt Keeper. Whatevers. But James Carville, oh boy, oh man. This interview that he had recently is going pretty viral. And I want to compare it to something that he said just 5 months ago. Just 5 months ago. I want to remind you what James Carville said, because we're going to compare it to what he's saying now. This is right after the election. Listen to this.
So you, as Mr. It's the Economy Stupid, was this an economy election? And if so, is Sanders right that on populist, working class, kitchen table issues, the Dems didn't do enough?
Well, what he is not right about, the Democrats have done a number of things for working people. I mean, Obamacare expanded health care for 23 million more people than had it before. A lot of things in President Biden's Build Back Better program created millions of jobs for working people. But I think Senator Sanders has some of a point here. And that is, there were things we could have run on harder that have effect. The minimum wage. It passes everywhere by 70%. I mean, I know that President Biden was for it and Harris was for it, but we didn't put it front and center. What about taxing the incomes over $400,000 and taking that money and put it in a first-time home buyer's mortgage relief fund? I mean, there were things that Senator Sanders would favor that we could have put more front and center. Now, there are a lot of things that are just popular that Democrats are for, and they're popular with every kind of Democrat in the country. They also happen to be popular with independents and even some Republicans. And we should run on a popular thing. A popular thing was not continuing the Biden administration. That was clearly not what people wanted. I think he's a great guy, but people didn't want more of that, and that's what we gave him.
5 months ago, he basically said that Bernie Sanders was right to run on a populist like message, right? Like, people are paying attention to the economy. You know, maybe we just didn't have the best campaign, etc. He's talking about the Kamala campaign. He was also talking about Joe Biden as well. Now, I had to show you that because, like I predicted, James Carville has already changed his tune. It's interesting what people say post-election, like immediately after the election. That was in November. And then what they say a couple of months later, because just like that, James Carville has fallen back in line. This is what he's saying now. Check this out. This was an interview that he had with Politics War Room, Al Hunt. Listen to this.
Well, you forget 2020. Everybody wants to forget 2020, particularly the progressives. Okay, after you had Biden, whose old definition of been around the track a lot, you had Bernie, you've had Elizabeth Warren, okay, you had Buttigieg, you had everybody. It was not close. How many times do Democratic voters have to tell you, we don't want you? It would certainly happen.
So here's the first part of him being disingenuous. So see how he flipped just like that from what he said 5 months ago? Right? Okay. So was it the voters that said they didn't want him? Or was it the DNC that said they didn't want him? 2016, was it the voters that said, hey, those states that you won, we're going to give those to Hillary? Or was that the DNC? In 2020, was it the voters? Because when we're talking about that populist message, didn't that help him win New Hampshire and Nevada? And I would say also Iowa. Pete Buttigieg lied. Right? Of course, things changed when they got to South Carolina. But I think we all know what happened there. And I think we all know what happened after South Carolina. Obama picks up the phone, makes a phone call, tells people, drop out, get out of here. But keep Elizabeth Warren in on Super Tuesday. This is James Carville all of a sudden pretending like the media, including himself, who heavily was smearing any type of a populist message at that time, played a big part in that. Let's continue. This is why I told you guys not to trust it. This is why I said this, because people are like, oh my God, they're all saying the right thing. They all get it now. It's like, I feel like sometimes the audience, right? Like those of us that are watching it, the people who are not a part of that, especially that DNC bubble or that DC bubble, it's like the DC bubble is playing checkers and the rest of us have been playing chess. Flip-flop, sorry. The DC bubble has been playing chess and the rest of us have been playing checkers. That's what it feels like. It's like they already figured this out. Like their job is to make you think, oh, you know what? Maybe those leftists and maybe some of those progressive ideas were right. Maybe they have a point. Maybe they da-da-da-da. And I'm going to warn you about that now. What I'm trying to warn you about with them leaning into the whole AOC thing. This is all a trick. Like they're playing chess. And then you see how they turn. Let me let them go on.
Happened in 2016. It was straight up. And by the way, give Bernie Sanders a lot of credit. He raises a lot of money. He's got very passionate following. And he wins in Vermont. Okay, but that's about it. And the question is, do we want a more ideologically pure, committed party, or do we want to win elections? And it's really that simple. And by the way, they have run in primary after primary after primary. They were all really well funded. And Biden didn't even show up on the ballots until South Carolina. So it's not like you don't have a shot to make your case. You make the case and people keep rejecting it.
So do you see how he's just pretending? He's leaving out everything else that happened that helped Biden win South Carolina? You see how he's leaving everything out about all the people that Obama told to drop out of the race?
But this what part of this don't you understand?
Tate in Blackstone, Virginia, the home of Virginia Tech, says since Trump is using emergency powers to impose tariffs on Americans, does Congress have any power to...
Okay, that's the part there about the Bernie part. And then they get into the Trump part about the tariffs and all that kind of stuff. But do you notice how his tone has already changed? Notice how his message has already changed that quickly? We're not even headed towards midterms yet. And he's already done. You see that? See the game that's being played? Their job is to convince you, because Kamala lost, right after she lost, their job was to convince you to make you think, let's make the left think that they were right. So that then they'll come right back over to our side. Right? But then they get in line very quickly. He didn't even honey, if we put ink on the paper, the ink didn't even dry. That's how quick he shifted. And this whole idea that David Hogg is pushing the Democrats, and what David Hogg wants to do, he wants to get those other Democrats that are not a part of that populist message out of there and have them primaried. That shit ain't gonna fly either. And let me show you what he's doing here. Check this. He has a message for David Hogg about that. Listen to this.
Is David Hogg. Who's David Hogg? David Hogg is vice chair of the DNC. He was a survivor of the Marjorie Douglas Stoneham catastrophe, apocalypse, whatever you call it, mass murder. And he is a young but very progressive, in a hurry young man, fine. And he is trying to raise money to primary other Democrats. All right, now wait a minute. Let's get this straight. He is the vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and he is talking about raising $20 million to primary other Democrats. Well, when I look at the DNC, ideally it should be an organization that's trying to beat Republicans, not other Democrats. And if you want to have a kind of squad thing where you go, they never run against Republicans. Understand that. The squad never, ever runs against a Republican.
With the exception of AOC.
Who did she run against?
You know, she ran against a bunch of Republicans in the congressional elections last.
That was a plus 30. But I think
she helped you come. No, but your point's right.
That she doesn't. When you're in a plus 30 Democratic district, I just don't pay attention to you.
So the point that he's making here is that you should not primary another Democrat, that person should just continue to maintain that seat. That person should just skate right to the general election and not have any type of challenge. Let me make something very clear. I think all these people got to go. And I've been very clear about this. I think all those people in Congress have got to go. I think the whole slate needs to be wiped. And you need a mixture of things, the same way that they have in Germany, for example. I think you need some Greens in there. You need some independents in there. You need a mixture. You need something other than this two-party system, okay? But this mindset that because you have a seat, you deserve to keep it is ridiculous. That no one should be able to challenge you in your own party. What kind of BS is that? And it just makes no sense. I never heard the entitlements. I have the seat, so don't you even think about trying to run against me. James Carville basically believes that these Congress members should just ride this shit out on into retirement and become like Nancy Pelosi and be there like in your 80s, or Dianne Feinstein, be there like when you're 90, etc. But nobody should ever challenge you in your own party. It's wild when you think about it.
I understand that, and somebody's got to win. But when you're talking about using the power of the DNC, whatever power it has, it's not very much, but you're using that, and we're paying, Democratic donors are paying David Hogg's salary, they're paying David Hogg's staff, and he wants to run against other Democrats. Well, that's America. Run against who the fuck you want to, but don't resign your position. Have guts, man.
Pause. I just want to talk about taking someone's spot, right? If you played sports, you may have had the opportunity to take someone's spot. Just because there's a captain of the basketball team, just because I'm the captain of the basketball team, doesn't mean that I'm going to be the captain 2 years from now. It doesn't mean that. You got to earn it. And you should want to fight to keep it. So this is just bizarre to me. These are things I just don't understand. I just don't understand. What are you talking about? So the people on the bench never get to play? So the people on the bench never get to play? If I get injured, if I get hurt, I'm still supposed to be allowed to play, and the person on the bench is not allowed to come up and sit and replace me and get in my spots. And you say, oh, that doesn't happen in Congress. Dianne Feinstein didn't even know where she was before she passed away. They were telling her how to vote on legislation. They were telling her what to say. But they didn't want anyone else to come get that seat. You can learn a lot from sports. And people say, oh, well, the jocks are stupid or whatever. No, I don't believe that. Let me tell you something. As someone who played sports, you can learn a lot by being on a team. Because when you're on a team, it's not just about you. It's not. You have to learn how to work with other people. And you know what? When you fall, your team is supposed to be there to help you get back up. If you're out, your team is supposed to be able to fill in that gap. But I don't even think at this point anymore, these are even teams. Like, you literally have people that have just become bench riders. I feel like Nancy Pelosi is a bench rider. Why are you still there? Why are you running again? See how he changed that message really quick? Really quick. From Bernie was right with the populist message to no, go away.
God, stand your ground. And I don't think that I don't think that's part of the Democratic coalition. I don't think they're redeemable. I don't think they want to be redeemed. Then I go back to the emphasis of something called American Voices that is supported by mainstream Democratic groups that had 12 at a meeting this month, April of this year, where they had bowls of buttons where you could put your pronoun and wear your button. I don't think these people get it. I don't think they ever will get it. And I've said this before, and I'll say it now. I think we ought to think about just having a schism. I think these people should get their own party. Don't call it anything Democratic. Call it the Socialist Urban Justice Community Unity Party of the whatever. Right. And then after the election, maybe we can have negotiations, or you can, vote for a Democrat to be the speaker if we win. But I actually think that it might be at a point where there are certain elements in a Democratic coalition that we just can't live in the same room with these people, because
he said he can't live in the same room with you. These people, he said we can't live in the same room with these people. That's what he said. Now, I want to say something. There's only one thing that he said in this conversation that I agree with. And that is this, that the people who support the populist policies, universal health care, free pre-K, free college at state schools, increase the minimum wage, the people who support those policies should have their own party. I've been saying this since 2021. And the reason why I feel that way is because people like James Carville and the DNC are not going to allow those people the space to move. You get out of bounds, then they get AIPAC to come after you. And by the way, the other Democrats don't stop it. The other Democrats don't say, no, don't try to take their seat. Most of them are silent. Rashida Tlaib might say something. Ilhan Omar might say something. Most part, Corey and Jamal are gone because AIPAC said you got to go. So if they're on a team, why didn't the whole team of Democrats in the House stand up and fight for their seats? Why didn't the whole team of Democrats stand up and say, no, you don't attack my teammate. We've got her back. Why didn't they do that? Because everybody out for theirself. These people don't care. They just want to sit there, do as little work as possible, stay there long enough to get the pension, write a book, and speaking engagement fees. That's it. And the best way for them to do that is by not trying to change any damn thing, just going with the status quo. Somebody else finally said it. The only thing I agree with what he said here, which is that, yes, those people should have their own party. And I said it. Everybody that came from Justice Democrats, that should have been a separate party. I know what people say. Third parties are hard. Independent is hard. I get it. I get it. But that started years ago. Think about where it would be today. Because the Democrats aren't going to let, and I warned people about this with AOC as well. I'm going to go ahead and let you know now one more again. The DNC is not going to allow her to be the nominee. The problem that you run into with this particular strategy is they can't get out of the primary process. And now you got people like James Carville saying they shouldn't even be able to primary anybody. If you know that Bruce Spiro, who represented the DNC at the DNC lawsuit, if you know that Bruce said and explained in court that the DNC is not responsible, the federal judge made it very clear during the DNC fraud lawsuit that the DNC is a corporation and they don't really have to owe you anything when it comes to votes, that they don't owe you the nominee that you voted for. They don't. It's all written down. So that's the problem that you run into. They're not even going to let you get out of the primary. And now saying that, if that were to happen, then you know she moved over to their side. Then you know she made some compromises. Then you know that she is willing to say, okay, I'll put that populist talk behind me and I'll run a centrist, moderate campaign, right? Hell, Barack Obama didn't even want Kamala and she was right there. A little bit more here, and then I'm going to show you the response from David.
They actually learned nothing from 2024. They learned nothing from history, and they are hell-bent going this direction. And maybe what we need to do is say, you go, people, go ahead, go, and then we'll see you the Wednesday after the election and do as you do in parliamentary system. But I'm not sure that the great Democratic big tent coalition that I've spent all my life trying to cobble together, keep together, or something like that. Maybe David Hogg and American Voices need to get their own party.
James, I just see what I've been telling you guys. What I've been telling you, right? It's like, I don't know. It's like begging to be a part of I don't know. It's like begging to be a part of a club that don't want you. It's like begging to be invited to someone's birthday party when they clearly did not invite you and didn't forget to invite you. It's just, they just didn't want you there. And it's like you showing up that day and saying, hey, at their birthday party, and they're like, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, I guess you forgot to invite me. No, they don't want you. And they don't want you there because the donors don't want you there. And that's who they work for. So I actually agree with him on that part, that they need to get their own party. Now, David Hogg responded to that, and he said that James Carville is timid. He said that he's timid, like he doesn't want like change or anything like that within the Democratic Party. And this is why when people were saying James Carville is speaking the truth now after Kamala lost and that the populist way is the way to go, that's why I said give it time. And you see how quickly he's gone back around. Skylar says, that's a perfect analogy, Sabby. It's like showing up to a party that you weren't invited to. That's really weird. Like they don't want you there. They don't want you there. Okay. Now, Blakely, I think, sums this up very beautifully. Blakely, she's been on this show before, pro-Palestine activist. Listen to what she says. She's trying to warn people too.
I already see people having useless conversations in the media and online about whether or not AOC is going to run for president in 2028. First of all, we don't even know if we're going to have an election in 2028, so stop getting ahead of yourself. But second of all, you're out of your minds if you think that the DNC is going to allow that. Not only does the DNC despise her, I was about to say, we talked about this yesterday, but actually we talked about it in my live on YouTube and Twitch, not on here, but we did talk about it. And I said that not only are they never going to allow that to happen, okay, because the DNC and the Democratic establishment despise the progressives, despise them. It doesn't matter how much AOC tries to capitulate and absorb herself into the party. They still hate her, just like they still hate Bernie Sanders, and they always will. That's number one. Number two, you're out of your mind if you think they're going to run another woman. Are you kidding me? The Democrats are 0 for 0 with running women candidates. That's not going to happen. Also, they would never run a progressive. Hear me now, quote me later. They're going to run another fucking neoliberal hack. Okay? Because that is what they do. And I'm going to keep saying it and I'm going to be proven right. It's going to be one of these bad Obama impersonators. It's going to be either Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, Josh Shapiro, Cory Booker. It's going to be one of those people. It will not be a woman and it will certainly not be a progressive.
Yeah, I think Blakely is spot on there. Like, you guys, it just come on, look. Now, this is why I tell people, what can you do, right? Because you know they already picked the nominee. It's not like the GOP where they don't have super delegates. The Democratic Party has super delegates. So there's that. Here's what I think people should be doing, and this is the conversation that I had with Cenk Uygur, which is that, first of all, everybody keeps focusing on what we can do on the national level. Focus on what you can do in your community. Start there. One of the things I do is mutual aid. This Saturday, I'm having the first mutual aid workshop. It will be virtual on Zoom. I'll give you more information about it Tuesday night when I go live, but you'll be able to access it through my newsletter. If you want to learn how to do mutual aid where you live, come join me for that workshop. It won't be the last one. I'll try to do one a month. Come join me for that workshop, because the reality is, folks, look, you can sit back and wait for a politician to win and hope that they pass said legislation. But I don't know about you, but I've been doing that my whole adult life. Or you can take action in your own community. And I was thinking about this, is if everybody did that, if everyone decided I am going to try to help in my community, would so many people even like rely on presidential election? Would they hope? Would they put all their faith in a presidential election? That's one of the things. Mutual aid, that's just one. Another one is ballot measures, ballot initiatives. Guys, the progressive policies didn't pass on the national level, but they have passed in some of the states. People still talking about $15 minimum wage on the national level, which is passed in a lot of states, even red ones. What are we doing? Now is the time to get on board to start running those ballot measures, get those signatures to run ballot measures for these policies. We've passed them in Massachusetts. I think they passed the minimum wage increase even in Nebraska. I mean, it's not just blue states. This is why when Cenk Uygur was on, I said, you live in California. California is a ballot measure state. You guys have, I think, the most ballot measures on the ballot. You guys have been passing these progressive things. Why we keep trying to do things by going through, climbing this damn mountain, when we can just walk across the street? And it's not to say that these things are easy. They're not easy, but you see progress faster that way than you do waiting for the next presidential election. Like, I don't know how else to say it. And then we're talking about 4 years, right? Like, people go to sleep, then they wake back up, then they go to sleep, then they wake back up. And how much has your life improved? I firmly believe there will come a time where mutual aid is going to be a necessity in this country. Some of us saw that during the pandemic. So there's that. There's mutual aid. But what you should not do is give your money to these politicians that you know aren't going to make it out of a primary because the DNC isn't going to allow them to. Bernie Sanders got over $100 million in 2020. I want you to sit back, take a look at your community, take a look at your friends' community, and ask yourself what that money could have done. Don't have a rec center, $100 million. You definitely could have a rec center for that. It wouldn't cost $100 million either. You don't have clinics in your town, your neighborhood. People got to drive really far just to get to a clinic. You could have built clinics, but we couldn't because everybody gave their money to Bernie Sanders. That included me too. I'm not perfect. That included me too. I donated a lot of money to Bernie Sanders. I look back and especially after the pandemic, I look back and I wish I would have given that money to other people, to people who actually needed it. Whether it's mutual aid, whether it's ballot measures, whether it's everybody keep talking about universal health care. We've been talking about this for the longest time. Why aren't we trying to do something like that in the States? At the end of the day, I know that people are going to do what they want. I'm not in the ballot. I'm not in the voting booth with you, right? When you go to vote, I'm not. I just don't want you giving your money to these people. Like we need to put our money back in our communities. We need to put our money into community building, into organizing and mutual aid. That's what we need to do with our money. And people say, oh, what about the Green Party? You voted for Jill Stein. Yeah, I voted for Jill Stein. I ain't donate no money either. I told you after Bernie, I was done. I said, no, I'm not donating money to politicians anymore. You guys, you're free to do as you wish. I'm just asking that you prioritize that money in your community first. $100 million could have been clinics, could have built daycares, could have built homes. We got all these homeless people out on the street. Homelessness continues to increase. But we're giving all our money to politicians. Something to think about. That is it for me Sunday, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday, your 420 Sunday, and you go out with a boom, 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 bam. Have some fun. Have a doobie-doobie-doo. And have a good night, guys. I think I have a couple of super chats as well. Thank you, 100 Black Roke. Grand Theft Auto and the likes was a good start towards recklessness. Single parents. LPA says, once you wake up and see the shenanigans, that third eye is open to their BS. The Oracle said, Sabby, that would be the rigging that he's leaving out. Exactly. Thank you, Cool Blue. James Carville described 41st POTUS Bush Sr. in the 1993 Oscar-nominated doc film, The War Room, as the old calendar. So yesterday, this describes all connected to Bill Clinton, including Carville. Interesting, Cool Blue. Huh. Thanks, Trusting Success. Did he say the name could be Urban Party? Yeah, he did. He's ridiculous. Thank you for this as well. James Carville does Dem Party voter outreach. And thanks, Where's the Love? James bringing back that Dixiecrat flavor strong. Thank you, Justin. Dem Party primaries are a waste of time and money. David Hogg is a naive tool for the Democratic Party, and Carville is a crusty old fool. Let the Dems destroy themselves. Thank you, Fully. These were always rats on a sinking ship. Thanks, Cool Blue. Interesting fact, the home states of D's, Bill Clinton, Arkansas, Al Gore, Tennessee, and James Carville, Louisiana, realigned to Republicans in 2000. Yep. Thank you, Wandy. Fannie Lou Hamer fought to vote with Strom Thurmond. And thank you, Justin. By encouraging a Dem Party primary strategy, David Hogg is doing the same job that Bernie and AOC have been sent out to do to keep sheepdogging people to stay with the Dems. There you go. All right, guys, that is it for me. Again, enjoy your Easter Sunday. Enjoy your 420 day. Have a good night. Keep up the fight. Yeah.